the lovely Anne Celine. YJ and Project Blue Book, good to see you guys. Thanks for coming in. And we will have new t-shirts as of Monday when the new website is launched. Fabster, always a pleasure. Sam Faz and Guillermo, how are you guys? Thanks for joining us as we continue on here. Boz Monster and Ivosevich, how are you? Thanks for joining us. And Mark Rademacher, how are you, my friend? Sonny Conway, Richard Elmore, Vinman, and Irish Lincoln. Donnie C., how you doing? And we're running out of time here. We always run out of time doing this. The gorgeous Manitoba Becky. There she is, the pride of branded Manitoba. We call her the Wheat Queen around here. Stunning Avi May. How are you? Snakes, thank you so much for that awesome super chat. Really do appreciate it. It's a great way to support this show and what we do on a nightly basis. So thank you so much. And let's see. Who else do we have here joining us? Bob Erkins, good to have you here. We'll have more coming on in because that's the way it happens. The lovely and talented Kira. We want to say that the Super Chat is a great way to support what we do on a nightly basis. Hello, gorgeous Golden Lee A. And, of course, hit that subscribe button, ring that bell if you have not been here before and you love our channel. We hope that we can earn a thumbs up or down as well. Get your horns up. We're going to get going right now. Of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. Our guest tonight is definitely no stranger when it comes to breaking news. Bryce Zabel is a former CNN correspondent. He now helps make documentaries. You can follow him on Twitter at Hollywood UFOs. Not only is he very familiar from being in front of the camera and telling the story, but he does it behind the camera as well. He's very educated. He's very influential in the field of UFOs when it comes to dealing with some of the biggest names in ufology. A researcher, a developer, someone who literally has done it all on the trail of the saucers, and we're so glad to have him back. It's been a couple of years since we had him on, but what we really need to talk with Bryce tonight is this incredible narrative that we have seen going on for almost 4 years now in the UFO field. We're going to break it all down for you tonight. Bryce, thank you so much for coming on Spaced Out Radio. How are you?
I'm doing great. I thought it was just so impressive to see all these people who are here. I want to thank them all for being here and all the ones who come in. Very impressive. I've got my fully leaded coffee on board here, so I'm ready to roll and tear down a narrative or two with you.
All right, Bryce, you are somebody who, like me, I mean, you had way more experience than I ever did. I almost did 10 years in mainstream media, but you built a life and a career off of journalism and mainstream television and the stories that go behind it. How do you go from being a professional journalist, from what you were back in the day, going all the way up to CNN, now going after the UFO story? How did that happen?
I don't think, first of all, I don't think of myself, maybe other people do, but I don't think of myself as a retired journalist or an ex-journalist or anything of the sort, because I got trained as a journalist. I went to the school of University of Oregon and in broadcast news. So I think you always have those feelings about, hey, if I don't have the answer to something, I'm not going to just take anybody's word for it. I'll make some phone calls. I'll talk to people. I'll till the soil a little bit, find out what's underneath it. So you don't actually go from here to there. You're sort of a journalist, and then you might do other things with your journalistic expertise or whatever. So I think that's kind of what I'm doing. I certainly did divert for a period of time into all television and features. Now I'm also doing a little reporting on the Trail of the Saucers site. I just think there's so much going on, which I know we're about to get into, but there's just so much going on. It'd be a terrible time to only be doing one thing and to be standing on the sidelines. So I'm in there.
This is a topic that could really encapsulate someone. And I want to start off tonight, before we get into the narrative. Over the last few years, we have seen a lot of media outlets, big-name media outlets, jump on the UFO bandwagon. As a journalist yourself, have you been happy with this coverage, or have you been satisfied but felt they could have done more, or are you disappointed with the way they've led the story?
I'm not happy with it in that I would like to see more of the mainstream media commit to it and to put some of their firepower in a full-time position to look into it. If indeed it's the biggest story of our lifetimes or anybody's lifetime, then it seems like we sort of ought to be able to do that. I mean, we were able to put Woodward and Bernstein pretty much full-time on Watergate. I'm not sure why they're not doing more of that. Now, having said that, the actual product that comes out, about 80 to 90% of it is just retreading things. Things that and I know, and the people who are listening to us know. We've heard before, and it's kind of being, regurgitated or repackaged, but it's not breaking new ground. Most of that is okay when it happens that way, because there's still a lot of people that are trying to catch up on the topic. So I don't take issue with it. What I do take issue with is what I would call the lazy reporting, where, and it's given away immediately when somebody, the classic giveaway is if any reporter writes little green men into any article, it's like, okay, I'm done with you. That's it. And if they sort of have kind of a above it all sneering kind of attitude, I'm not into that. But increasingly, there is good reporting being done outside the mainstream, in the mainstream. Not all of it is perfect, but that would be true of any topic, right? Journalism is always hitting a moving target. Journalism is what they call the first draft of history, right? So I do believe that the history books are all going to have to be rewritten once we sort of disclose this reality to ourselves. But that doesn't mean that journalism has to get it 100% right all the time. We just have to be moving in the right direction.
What's bothered me about it is the fact that they have only taken it so far. They've only taken the story so far.
Right.
They haven't pushed the limits of what other people know. And I kind of blame the To the Stars Academy on this. The reason why is they trotted out Chris Mellon. They trotted out Luis Elizondo. They trotted out David Fravor. And it was basically like, you don't really need to go delve into this subject. We're going to give you what you need. And that was just good enough. You didn't see Dolan. You didn't see Grant Cameron. You didn't see any of these long time, even the late Stanton Friedman before he passed away.
Right.
You didn't see any of them coming on for commentary or the second part of the story. And I found that very disappointing with the media, because it really showed in my eyes that really the media didn't know what to do or how to all of a sudden take this topic after years of complaining and griping about it.
But and you're so right about that. But what's really the dynamic? The dynamic historically in the mainstream media, and I even hate to use that, we're in media in general, okay, over the years, has been to keep this topic at arm's length, because the one thing a journalist cannot handle is being made fun of, right? For going off on a wild goose chase, right? That's a career killer. So they can't have that. What's going on right now is that increasingly reporters around the country, local reporters and national reporters and international reporters, are starting to say, there's a lot of smoke there, but there's some fire as well. There's a lot of signal, but and a lot of noise, but there's a signal, and you're starting to get people waking up. If I was running a newsroom, I mean, hey, I would love to grab a couple of reporters from any of the major newspapers and say, this is a big story. We're going to start breaking stories in it. Whatever else you're working on, we'll handle it. Get to work on this one. You're full time. That's what I would like to see happen. Now, on the other hand, there are moments where you start to say, well, there's a promise. I mean, I don't know what you think about it, but I just read Ross's In Plain Sight. And what I like about what I read there is here's a guy that's an investigative reporter in Australia who just basically said, I'm going to take a couple of years and look into this and get back to people. And he was honest, about who he talked to and how he talked to them and what he learned and how he's changed his opinion on certain things. So I think we're by degrees, not perfect, a little bit at a time, but we're getting there.
And I want to see that, but I guess the follow-up questions is what's really irking me, because when I went to broadcasting school, we were always taught, look, ask the first question or feed off the first question, but never be afraid to ask the follow-up.
Yes,
and we're not.
Absolutely.
I mean, the DNI report is a great example of that. Not a single journalist asked, why did we not go prior to 2004? What about
absolutely? It's crazy. It's crazy. That's crazy. But here's something else that's crazy. This whole thing sort of got rolling in the modern time on December 17th, 2017, right? That a day that will be etched in our minds, all right, with the New York Times article. So that was 3 years before the 2020 election. We went through how many debates between the Democrats and the Republicans and Trump and Biden and the vice presidents had a total of 4 debates. Was there no time in any of those dozens of debates for a reporter to just really get into that? How is that still happening? Okay, I think that's kind of an indicator of where we stand, in that people are still afraid to be seen as taking it seriously, and that still bums me out. And I want to do what I can, and I know you're doing what you can, and so are the people listening to us, to try to make that a little less common. But that's, if you want an example of where we're going wrong, that's a good one. We can't even, in a debate that goes on hours in a matter of public policy, talking about national security, ask about UAP. And again, you are so right also about the report. If I read the report, and while I think there were things that were good about it, I'm not going to trash it 100% by any means, but it made it sound like nothing was going on until 2004 with the Nimitz, right? And I'm thinking, well, okay, if all you do is you think UFOs really got kicked off in 2004, then you would not be blamed for thinking, well, maybe they're China or Russia, because, hey, and since 2004, they probably got pretty good tech. But if you start to think about those same objects being sighted in 1945, 6, and 7, and 8 through the 50s, well, China didn't even have an air force at the beginning of that. And Russia certainly wasn't building them at that point. So I think what we've done by degrees is move into phases. Phase 1 is we admit they're real. Phase 2 is we admit we don't make them. Phase 3 is we say we don't think China or Russia make them. So we're now rapidly getting to where we'll be able to call ourselves in phase 4, which is, well, do the math, folks. If we don't make them and they don't make them and they're real, who does make them?
Well, and I think people are starting to finally figure that out, because in the most recent interviews over the last couple months, we've seen Chris Mellon and Luis Elizondo kind of shy away from using the words Russia and China.
Yes.
And I think that was a very, very good move in regards to that, because when you eliminate the vocabulary, you're now not saying it. And that says a lot if you're not saying it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's an interest, I have a site on the Medium publication called Trail of the Saucers. And my co-editor, David Bates, wrote an article. I think it was titled something like UAP are not made by Russia or China, and the Pentagon knows this. And it got the most reads of anything we did last month, because people are hungry to say, that's true, damn it. I know that's true. I want to read more about it. So look, if you look at almost any major social issue of our lifetimes and even preceding our lifetimes, the public tends to get it first, and then the institutions kind of catch up. Okay, so that was probably true of civil rights, and it was true of the Vietnam War, and it'll probably be true of UFO disclosure. The public is going to get hip to this a little faster than the institutions. And the other thing is we don't have to wait for the institutions. We can just get on with this ourselves, like what you're doing right now and what your listeners and viewers are doing. We're all sort of waking up simultaneously right now, and we're moving the ball ourselves.
As much as we try to move the ball ourselves, are people listening, though? Because we know the mainstream media really doesn't care about the entire UFO field as long as it's Elizondo or Mellon. We know that the mainstream public, through everything that is going on right now, really does not have time for, to step out of their own livelihoods right now. Could this topic have come at a worse time than what we are seeing right now?
Well, that's a pretty good point, because the truth is we live in some pretty extraordinarily tough times, chaotic times, discouraging times, depressing times. I mean, clearly the environment is in trouble. Clearly we have not been good stewards of the earth, and things are tough. And politically we can't seem to agree on even how to save ourselves from a pandemic. So we just have a lot of trouble in the body politic, if you will. I remain, though, kind of optimistic. I think often what is counterintuitive may be the intuitive choice, and so in this case, you'd say, well, maybe this isn't even a good time to disclose. We're so screwed up right now, it could only make things worse. But I could also argue that, yeah, these are really tough times right now, and maybe the only thing out there that is going to get humanity thinking like we're all part of the same team is for us to get on with disclosure, because then at least at that point, we're all going to have to admit that there's probably more uniting us in similarities as human beings than dividing us. I mean, I'm very big on researching, and I'm developing the Betty and Barney Hill story for television. And, you think about it, if Betty and Barney Hill were abducted and that happened, then it's pretty clear that the one thing that the aliens didn't seem to care about was the color of his skin, right? I mean, right. Everybody else that he dealt with in his life saw that he was a black man married to a white woman, but it doesn't sound like the aliens did, right? So maybe there's some hope here, maybe.
Well, I mean, it's one of those things that we are going to have to, eyeball over the next little bit, because nobody is talking aliens. We're barely talking ships right now. I can give you a great example of some very poor reporting that I have seen up here in Canada, where a couple of months ago, the Canadian television news network CTV had their Washington bureau reporter, their DC bureau reporter, interview Chris Mellon for 14 minutes. Not one question was asked about whether or not Canada was having anything to do with UFOs. Did the Canadian government know about UFOs?
How stupid is that?
And then the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, flies their Washington, D.C. bureau chief over to Wyoming to interview Lou Elizondo for 2 hours. And in their 17-minute hit, did not mention Canadian airspace security, UFOs, nothing. It was all about what was going on in the south of the border, which is it's really strange to me.
It's totally strange, but you know what it also is it may not even say much about ufology or UFOs or UAP reality as much as it says about just sort of a sort of lazy journalism practiced by people who are working day to day. Because clearly, I mean, I don't know, back when I was in journalism school, which does seem like, well, it was in the last century, we know that. My professors wouldn't have allowed that kind of thinking to prevail. They would have said, you got to get the local angle. Well, if you're a Canadian reporter and you get your hands on Elizondo or Mellon, two of the brightest lights we've got out there, and you're talking to them about a topic they seem informed about, and you don't ask them about Canada, well, you should just resign and let somebody else do the job.
I absolutely agree, but to me it shows the lack of real preparation for this. But if I read if I read my audience correctly, how much has social media hurt the mainstream journalistic take on this story? Because we're all about clickbait headlines now.
Yeah.
We're all about the feels. We're not about telling the story. We're about, I've never in the last 10 years seen more reporters get involved in a story rather than tell the story. I mean, is journalism on a mainstream front really dead from what you and I were trained on compared to what we see now?
Listen, it would be pretty easy for you and I to spend a couple hours and name a lot of things that mainstream journalism is getting wrong. And I don't know that necessarily helps that much, because the truth is, there's always good reporters and there's bad reporters. But for example, to use Ross Coulthart, again, his book has a lot to do with the country he's from, Australia. He's got the local angle covered. And in fact, he did the world a favor by so bringing Australia to life that those of us who read his book in the United States and Canada have to say, I guess this is a worldwide phenomenon. So it's mixed. It's always going to be mixed. And it was always mixed, though. I mean, think about it. Go back to Watergate, all right? Woodward and Bernstein got it, and they wrote it hard. But it wasn't until it looked like they really had a story that the other newspapers said, maybe we should cover this a little more aggressively. Everybody has to wait to see that the water's fine. So one of the best things that could happen right now would be if the New York Times, instead of writing one article every 6 months, literally wrote an article a week. And just said, we're going to bring people up to speed. We're going to be doing radical, hard journalism, and we're going to be pressing people for questions. I got to be honest with you. I know Biden has a lot on his mind right now, and I don't want to get into the politics of on that level. But how is it possible that in a time when this report came out on June 25th, that the president of the United States, or in fact the Vice President Harris, who was on the Senate Intelligence Committee and voted for that report when she was a senator, how is it possible they're not getting asked about this? How is it possible that they don't have to go on the record? Why is that acceptable in 2021? I don't understand it. I don't think it's right, and I think it's got to change. Now, that can change because institutionally, as you point out, journalism can up its game, but there's other ways. We're just going to have to demand that our representatives do a little more work.
Well, we got 2 minutes before we have to go to break at the bottom of the hour. Bryce Zabel, Trail of the Saucers, is on here, and you can find him on Medium for Trail of the Saucers. I mean, this is going to be a great topic. When we come back from the break, I want to get into the narrative sanction of everything, because I don't know about you, but when I first saw that To the Stars Academy, not to bring up old hat or old news, but their first press conference.
Sure.
There was two things that kind of got my mind that day. Number one, no press at a press conference. That one was a red flag for me. And
that's kind of a problem.
And number two, I'm looking outside of Tom DeLonge, a bunch of people that all have ties to Robert Bigelow, and that was never mentioned either.
Well, because, why it wasn't mentioned? None of the reporters who weren't there wouldn't have known anyway, because they didn't know who Robert Bigelow was, and they hadn't done any investigation to find out whether they all worked for Bigelow or knew him or So it's like it just takes a while to get the engine up and running, and it's not quite there. The public's more interested in this currently than journalists, but I got to tell you, there are a lot of journalists who, if given the go ahead from their management, would love to dive into this story. It's a juicy story, and it's going to be the gift that keeps on giving in disclosure, where, that the stories never will end once we get this out before everybody.
Well, I hope that's right, because we do need some investigation. But I mean, what I see there are very few investigative journalists like Ross Coulthard who are still out there. If you hear the siren in the background, that's because the Japanese aren't coming. The Russians
they're
aren't
coming for you, my friend. All that trash talking and journalism and the government, they're coming for you.
Yep. I expect the black bears to be around here in no time. Literally no time. Bryce, I'm going to get you to hold on right there. We're going to step away for a break here at the bottom of the hour. Bryce Zabel, the UFO Narrative. We're going to start getting deep into the narrative when we come back here on Spaced Out Radio. Why is there a narrative? How did it begin? Why are we not talking about it more on Spaced Out Radio? Couple of my listeners, I would adore to have Tom DeLonge on Spaced Out Radio. He will never come on this show, ever.
Tom?
Yeah. Never.
Well, I think he's a little gun shy right now. He got a lot of blowback from his, what he, and also, let's face it. I mean, how would you feel if you were running an organization and you had a mass desertion at the end of the year? That would be, I'm sure he's still kind of reeling and wondering. That's why he's kind of retreated into rock stardom again, because at least that's safe and secure for him. And his foray into ufology kind of collapsed. And to this day, nobody has really investigated what precipitated the collapse at TTSA, right? And why is that? I don't know. But I'll tell you one thing. I wrote an article for Trail of the Saucers right after in February when they filed their SEC report. And, basically they tried to say, oh, yeah, we're just all about entertainment now. That's really the right choice. Give me a break. We don't need another entertainment company doing alien movies.
When Lou left, a couple of days later, I wrote an article on my 14 reasons why I never supported the TTSA. From what I heard, Jim Semivan read that, and and I had never interviewed anybody from that group. This was just outside observation of what I had noticed. And Jim said that I had it about 95 to 98% right. There were some.
Well, so tell me what your conclusion was then. What were you stating there?
Well, I stated the pressless press conference.
Okay, right.
Okay, we're here for the public. And we're not giving the public anything. Okay? Tom DeLonge going on Joe Rogan was a major faux pas, especially when he started talking about whipping his dick out on the air.
Yeah, that's not a real crowd pleaser.
No.
Maybe it is a crowd pleaser, but not for that crowd.
No, that crowd, from what I heard from a couple of insiders, that really pissed a few people off.
Yeah.
Really pissed a few people off. I would have to bring it up here. 14. Let me just bring it up here. I got it here.
I know people have trashed the Tom DeLonge on Joe Rogan, but I watched it a couple months ago, just I think for the second time. I kind of enjoyed it, because he did kind of forget that he was on a hot mic. You know what I'm saying? He kind of was saying things that he probably should have thought more about. And so I looked at it as, okay, this guy, what do people usually get in trouble for when they do interviews? For actually saying the truth or saying what they're thinking, right? Right? So he seems to have gotten in trouble for this because he didn't exercise enough discretion to shut up from time to time.
Right.
But that made me want to hear what he had to say even more, because he was clearly floating his own opinions about what he thinks is going on. And if he's had the high-level talks that he says he's had, then I found that interesting.
Well, here are my 14. I'm not going to read my examples. I'm just going to read my 14. Right. Number 1 was a pressless press conference. Number 2 was denial of media requests. That one, Lou Elizondo actually came out and apologized to me and a number of other people when we finally got him on the air. and said we didn't even know these media requests were being turned down. And the media person for the Stars Academy was Tom's sister, Carrie DeLong. Number 3 was TTSA name on the U.S. Navy videos, how the Navy never went after them. All right. Yeah. That one needed to be questioned. No talking aliens. And like I always say on this show, when you've never seen aliens or a UFO, it's never aliens, but when you're an experiencer, it's always aliens. Right. Yet we weren't allowed to talk UFOs. The political side of DeLong, UFOs are a very non-political issue. They're bipartisan, and yet when they're getting all of the news coverage on Fox, and President Trump was speaking about it at that time. The fact that he was really disparaging President Trump, love him or hate him, doesn't matter. That was something. Then he came out, said they were anti-ufology, and all of his posts that he removed, the Joe Rogan Experience, the TTSA is not a UFO group, playing the mainstream media to the narrative, trying to buy the free experiencers stats when he was pushing a negative alien agenda. There was just a ton of things. We got to go on in a couple of seconds here, but thank you, Snakes on a Train and Cat Chaser, for the awesome super chats. It's a great way to support what we do. Let's start the second half hour right now. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, you can check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, has a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. We're talking the UFO narrative tonight. Journalist Bryce Zabel is with us from Trail of the Saucers on Medium. You want to check that on out, Bryce. Let's get right into the Medium because the narrative is something that has really been pushing. I have been saying for almost 4 years, quoting Marshall McLuhan from back in the 1960s, the medium is the message. And when it came to UFOs, we learned this new word, narrative.
I'd like to define that first because I just want to make sure if we're going to do a deep dive, when you say the UFO narrative, what are we talking about in your mind?
In my mind, we're talking control of the subject.
Okay.
All right. Where we are seeing for the last few years, certain people in ufology really disparaging people who have done a lot of work over the last number of years and really trying to take over the entire storyline of UFOs.
Right.
Right. I mean, gone are the days of where we see Richard Dolan on major shows, or you remember Stanton Friedman was a frequent guest on Larry King Live all the time.
There's always a nostalgia for the good old days, and I was friends with Stan Friedman, and I have 2 of his books under option, and I've got a project where Stan Friedman's a character. It's the Roswell movie we have called The Crash, and it's so I have a lot of bona fides for being, I guess, somebody who cares about him. But I will say this. Stan wasn't a constantly evolving analyst, right? If you put Stan on in 2018 versus Stan in 2015 versus Stan in 2009, you got roughly the same things. You got the sound bites about Cosmic Watergate, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that one thing that is good is we have a bigger collection of individuals who you can frankly put on your show now, who are able to speak to an evolving narrative, right? Stan was his own narrative, right, and a positive one, and he did the ufology owes him a big debt of gratitude. But there's a lot of people that are busy trying to make sense of what's going on right now, and I think they're probably thinking about what you're talking about, the narrative. What is going on here? Who's saying what? Why are they saying it? And yet, underneath it all, for me, I mean, I'm just speaking for myself here. It's like, it's all well and good to talk about journalism and the narrative, et cetera, et cetera. I just want to know what is really going on. At the end of the day, if somebody would sort of sit me down and go, hey, let me relieve your anxiety. This is who they are. This is where they're from. This is what they want. I would be a happy guy, because I want to answer these questions. I don't want to argue about a lot of things. I just feel like the truth will set us free, good, bad, or indifferent. I want that narrative.
And I agree with you, but the way we see it being controlled right now, like the DNI report only going back to 2004, sure, or when the To the Stars Academy coming out saying, we're not talking aliens here. We're talking, threat narratives. We're talking right, these craft. We don't know where they're coming from. Well, in my opinion, breaking it down, maybe too simplistically, if it's not Russia, it's not China, not anybody on this world, someone is flying that craft. If it's not from here, it's alien.
Right. Or it's exotic. I mean, I guess it could be, there's other options besides alien. I guess there are interdimensional options, time travel options, local options. But what I was just going to say about, this kind of goes to your journalism and to the narrative, kind of in one little piece here. What I found most disappointing about the June 25th UAP report was not even what was in the report. It was that nearly 100% of the coverage was about what was in the report, a quick once-over, and then it was written on June 25th and 26th, and then it faded out. There was almost no analysis. Nobody was analyzing the report. Nobody was doing a deep dive. Nobody said, okay, the report made it sound like it was in 2004. Here's an article about everything that happened before that, or whatever. Or why did nobody say, okay, if they're seeing Tic Tacs in 2004, when was the first Tic Tac reported? Was that in 2004 or was it in 1949? Let's check that out. I mean, we've got to get people doing a little more analysis, is what I think is part of the problem here, because how are you going to know what your narrative is, or who's twisting the narrative if we don't ever sit down and do more than just accept what is spoon-fed to us? And by the way, and one final thing, I'll shut up about this, but Richard Dolan, you brought him up, terrific guy. He and I wrote the book AD After Disclosure back 10 years ago. So we're celebrating the 10-year anniversary. Happy anniversary, AD. Of that book. And one of the things that Dolan and I said in chapter 1, which I thought was really interesting, is that when that disclosure would tend to happen on a Friday afternoon after 4 o'clock. And son of a gun, that's when they dropped the UAP report. Now, that was one of the most specific things I've ever put in a book or an article as far as predictions go. And the reason I did it, because like you, a journalism background, I just said, if you're trying to bury something, you put it on Friday afternoon when it's not going to quite get in, and then they're going to have the weekend scrambling, and that's exactly what happened.
I'm smiling here because I had said the exact same thing to our audience, and I had a couple of people, including some pertinent guests, say, no, that's not going to happen. It's not a Friday afternoon story. And I said, watch, it's coming out on a Friday. And absolutely.
I mean, I got to tell you, I should have called Richard that day. I didn't. I was thinking about him. I was just going, man, that is interesting. And that wasn't even disclosure. I mean, that wasn't like the president going to the podium and saying we are not alone. That was just the report, kind of a conservative report on the topic. And they still hid that one. Interesting. So is that part of the narrative discussion?
I think it is. I think it does kind of open up everything that kind of goes with the story. I mean, let's face it. We mentioned a little bit right in the last part of the last half hour. The media was spoon-fed David Fravor. They were spoon-fed Luis Elizondo. They were spoon-fed Chris Mellon. Almost like they were told, this is the story. This is what we got. Follow what we have. You don't need anything more.
Yes, correct.
And the media, caught with their pants down on this subject, literally said, okay, we got what we need.
I mean, even look at the 60 Minutes report. They didn't really go too far afield. They basically said, we got to just stick with the main players here. Let's get Elizondo on. Let's get Mellon on. Let's get Fravor on. And if we can add another pilot or two, particularly if we can get a female pilot on, wouldn't that be great? And now we got a story. But they didn't really do a deeper dive. They didn't come back and do it again. I'm glad they did it. And to be honest with you, 60 Minutes is going to be doing another segment very soon, I'm quite sure, because they got so much attention to it that, if you're in broadcast news, you crave that. And when you find something that works, what do? Do it again.
You follow it up.
So we're going to see more of that.
But we saw a contradiction to that back in 2017, Bryce, where that UFO article in the New York Times by Ralph Blumenthal, Helene Cooper, and Leslie Kean had the most purchases and views and reads literally since 9/11. And it was their biggest selling paper since the 9/11 days. And there was no follow-up.
I know.
Stories like that always have a follow-up.
It's nuts.
Isn't that part of the narrative, though, the media narrative of not wanting to cover this truthful subject?
Yes. However, facts, truth, news has a funny way of forcing writers and citizens and politicians and journalists to have to confront these things sooner or later, even if kicking and screaming. So I again tend to be it's kind of ironic because I guess I would go back to AD, because what Dolan and I said about disclosure was it was impossible and yet it was inevitable. Okay, and I think it is possible to hold those two compartmentalized ideas in your head, and I do to this day. It is possible to talk about the narrative and say, it's just not happening. It's impossible, right? But I believe that the trunk has been opened enough to let a little light out right now, and you're not going to close it again. It's just something's going to happen on top of where we are that is going to unlock it. And frankly, with all the people and all the technology out there, it's probably going to happen sooner than later.
Okay, so if we go down that line, even if we push aside the mainstream media here for a second, who is telling the truth out there? All right, we have people like Richard Dolan going on and saying what his sources know. I mean, there's a lot of people who love and hate him at the same time. He's still batting the Wilson documents. We got Grant Cameron running all over the world, chasing Wu, which is fantastic. We have the Debrief, a team like the Debrief, which is made up of a bunch of amateur journalists who've come together for one cause, and I think they're doing pretty decent. We see John Greenwald from the Black Vault using his FOIA request to try and bring some sort of rationality to everything. We have a lot of haters in this field jumping on everybody. I mean, this field right now is a real mixed bag of nuclear waste when it comes to UFOs.
It's very funny you just said that, because while you were talking, right before you said mixed bag, I wish you could have seen the thought balloon in my head, because I was thinking it's a mixed bag, and then you said it, so now I'm freaking out. But it is a really mixed bag, and I guess people tend to do what they've always done. They tell their version of the truth. So there are a lot of people telling their version of the truth. They're not necessarily bad people any more than I'm bad or you're bad. We're all trying to tell our version of the truth. And because there's been 75 years of denial and ridicule surrounding this topic, the truth is a little harder to get your hands around and your arms around. So it's not as easy as it could be or could have been, and it's going to be messy. So there are who's telling the truth. Some people are probably deliberately not telling the truth, but most people are trying to tell their truth. And the problem is, I guess that's what I'm doing too, and that's what you're doing. But all I can say is, when I talk to, say, David Bates of the editor on Trail of the Saucers, we always just try to say to ourselves, well, how do you pursue this with integrity, right? Because that's all you've got. I mean, so I think going forward, you have to try to take it with integrity. So you mentioned the guys at the Debrief, and I agree with you. They do look like they're trying to take this on with integrity. And I have to support that and salute them for it. But is there one person out there at this point today who is just nailing it? And I don't know. I mean, I don't think I know that person.
Well, we seem to have taken turns. And what I mean is, for the first couple of years, it was all of a sudden Tim McMillan, who's a great friend of this show, really came out of nowhere, never been a writer or a journalist in his life, where all of a sudden he's breaking all of these massive stories. We've seen that with Danny Silva, with the Silver Record.
Absolutely.
Where Danny, I believe his father was a journalist, and Danny started a blog, and then all of a sudden, because he showed his heartfelt love for TTSA, and I know if he hears this, he's going to smile over that, because we've always kind of agreed to disagree with that. But, he ended up getting and meeting a lot of interesting people who were...
I admire Danny.
Yeah,
and what
he was very, very... I think he did a great job. He's done a great job.
And by the way, I mean, there's a lot of people like, James Fox, by the way, I think is someone who I admire and who has done good work, but he kind of moves at a slower pace than the news events are going. So, it took him 7 years to get the phenomenon out there. And I think we need our reaction force needs to be a little more fast reaction than that. Let me just give a shout out to somebody who I really enjoy reading. And it's Ryan Robbins, who on Twitter is post-disclosure, and his persona on YouTube is UFO Jesus. And in a way that might make him seem kind of fringe or whatever, but I don't read anybody who's got as much clear analysis of the situation as Ryan. I encourage people to read this guy on Twitter because he's studying it, he's thinking about it, and he's writing original stuff, and I like it.
Yeah, and I think he's done very well. It's nice to see his mature progression.
Yes, exactly.
I still wish he would have gone with UFO Jesus, because I think it's a much better name than post-disclosure, personally. But, I mean, we've seen George Knapp have his...
Well, I think he's Ryan Robbins now. But, okay, George Knapp. Okay, I have to give the big shout-out to George. I don't know where you come down on that, but I think George Knapp is the best investigative journalist working the story in the country today, and has been for a number of years. And if you gave a Best UFO Investigative Reporter award, he'd have won many years in a row, because he had the whole road to himself for the longest time. And if anything, he'll probably end up being overexposed, because when you're putting on a documentary on this topic, you go, get me Knapp, right? Well, where's the other Knapps? Right now it's like that UFO documentary on Showtime. You had George Knapp on for, it seemed like eternity, and I love George. I mean, but it was shocking how much they put him on, and Leslie Kean, of course. But there's got to be other people besides the two of them that we can put on TV.
Well, let me ask you a question about George Knapp, because over the last 6 months to 10 months, he has taken a lot of heat.
Yes.
From the UFO world and podcasts and people who believe he's bought, that he is part of the entire UFO narrative. He's holding back information. We do know he was an investor in the To the Stars Academy. We now see him working very closely with Jeremy Corbell, and for some reason the UFO community really hasn't attached itself to Jeremy Corbell. They made, mean, so George has become a little bit of a polarizing figure here.
Which shocks me, to be honest, Dave, because that guy is not bought. He's an honest man. I mean, in my dealings with him, he's terrifically knowledgeable, and he's honest. And he's also, to the extent that people want to fling those arrows at him, what they're really responding to in many cases is George is a journalist of the old school who, if he gives you his word, he won't do something. He'll protect a source or whatever. He would actually do that. And somebody might think that's withholding, but bot, I don't think so.
Okay, I'm going to give you, and I'm saying this, I'm a George Knapp supporter. I think the guy is a legend, and I think he needs to be treated as such. But somebody like PBR here, who's a longtime listener of ours, he says George Knapp pushed the fake Lazar narrative for 35 years now. And for a lot of people, that is all they need to bring the hate onto George Knapp.
Well, are we supposed to believe that? I mean, I don't. You know what? Again, we got to quit fighting with each other on this every specific, because there's been a lot of disinformation, denial, and ridicule out there for years. The Lazar narrative. I'm just asking you right now. Are you telling me? Is that what you think? Do you think the Lazar story is fake? Yeah.
Me, no. And
I don't either.
And I'll tell you why. Take away George Knapp. Take away Bob Lazar. KLAS Channel 8 TV in Las Vegas has never retracted the story.
Right.
And what people who do not understand the behind the scenes of how media works, in order to put a story like that on, it's not just let's trot this guy out and see what he has to say. For a story with those type of accusations that Lazar was making, they would have had to have, and Knapp would have had to have, some sort of proof or corroborating evidence outside of John Lear, outside of Gene Huff, okay, to sit there and say, we need some heavy evidence if we're going to be running this because we could be in trouble. And this story likely went to the team of lawyers before going out. And that's why I believe the story of Bob Lazar. Now, there may be factual evidence that is wrong because of what has happened over time, where he was arrested for being involved in a brothel and some other, his education that has never been proved, which Knapp has stated. But I think George Knapp takes the brunt of that. Yeah,
okay, I see where you're coming from there, and I think I agree. And the only thing I would add is that, okay, our solidarity for the truth should not rise or fall on specific cases. You have to look at the totality of each individual. I wouldn't want someone looking at me and saying, well, I saw he said this about Betty and Barney, and I disagree with that. Therefore, I can't believe anything the guy has to say about anything. I just don't think that's how it works, because we live in a world where this has been the most highly classified, most disinformed, most denied, and most ridiculed topic in world history. Okay, so yes, there's going to be disagreements because no one has made this easy to get to a place where we can agree on, to go back to your phrase, what the narrative is, right? There are different narratives by design. Whoever's sitting on top, I don't know that there is somebody out there who literally knows the entire truth and nothing but the truth, but I do think there are people in either private enterprise or government or whatever. I do think there are people who know more than I do. All right? I know what I know. I've done the best I could, but I would imagine there are some people who have a pretty good theory about what is going on. And I wish those people would talk. I think it's time.
I think it's time too, but it seems like we keep getting these turns. So, like throughout this year, it's been the Jeremy Corbell year. With the videos, okay? And I have talked to some people on the inside who don't even know where Jeremy Corbell is getting this information from.
Correct.
Obviously, he's become Knapp's working dog.
Right.
And I mean that politely. Okay?
Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, is it about taking turns to try and bring in different people? Because I remember George saying that he had, as we got about a minute ago, he knew about the 3 videos 8 months before the New York Times video came out, but he was told by certain people, this isn't your story. This has to go to the New York Times. And he bit his tongue on it. He didn't want to, but he knew that if he didn't bite his tongue, he burnt the bridge, and there goes the story.
Burnt the bridge, but I talked to George about that personally, and it wasn't just him taking orders from somebody. from George's point of view, he too sort of agreed it's more of a game changer if the New York Times does it than George Knapp at a television station in Las Vegas. Very true. I think he took a bullet for the cause at that point, or at least that's how I've seen it. Others may disagree, but it had to break his heart. I mean, he's a reporter. I mean, can you imagine knowing about those videos and sitting on them?
Yes,
that's terrible.
I grind my teeth. I'm surprised. Yeah. George is probably pretty glad that he has a dental plan after grinding his teeth over that. Bryce, I'm going to get you to hold on. Yeah. We are going to take a break here at the top of the hour. The UFO Narrative continues with journalist Bryce Zabel here on Spaced Out Radio as we enter hour 2. Oh, man, this is a great heated discussion. We're getting into some real good stuff coming up next on the mighty SOR, so stay tuned. All right, we're clear. That was a power half hour there, man.
It's flying. It's
Holy
fun.
cow.
I mean, because these are things that we all know that we live in historical times, and we're all trying to make sense of it, and we all have opinions. I just wish the time would come where we would stop having to try to find the story and instead try to process it. That would be. To me, that will be the day.
I understand the anger of the listeners. They're done.
Yeah.
They're done with experiencers. They're done with the games. And I understand, like our listener PBR, who he's here almost every night listening, and he is one of my biggest critics. But the reason why I like him is because he's not afraid to call out what he feels is right.
What is his opinion then? What is it that he's what is his disagreement with you and your show then?
Oh, he thinks I'm too easy on people.
Oh.
He thinks I'm too easy on people.
You're a nice man. There's nothing wrong with that. And by the way, I don't think you take it too easy on people. When we've had several conversations where you state your mind clearly. So I think that we also have to, you have to be in there for the long haul. You're going to have viewers and listeners. You can't just anger everybody every night.
But what we see now is we do see an influx of podcasts and radio shows, YouTube channels that are and blogs that, especially UFO Twitter, that will do anything to tear people apart. I mean, they will do and say anything. I mean, it is.
I hate that. I just hate it. I hate it.
Yeah.
It just makes my skin crawl when I see and hear that stuff.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, but you also have to say, look, I don't like it either. I've been attacked. Other people have been attacked, and it's just like, okay, where is this coming from? And people are pissed off. They're tired of the runaround. Let's get to it. We've had more information out there than in any time in history. And
you said it. Bingo. I hope when we come back that what you just said, we say again, because I do think that is part of what's going on. I feel it in my bones. You feel it. Your listeners feel it. People that have taken the time to even get marginally up to speed on this topic get frustrated because they say, what will it take? How much longer must this go on? And it's so irritating.
Absolutely. We can hit that when we come back because I think that's a good angle to hit. So, I mean, I'll just shut up about that right now so we don't waste anything during the break here. Yeah. But no, this is fantastic conversation. I really do believe, though, as much as I love George Knapp, I really, really have a strong feeling that Ross Coulthart's going to be the man who breaks it. I really do. Somebody down there is going to just all of a sudden talk to him. And
Ross is, I've spent some private conversations with Ross.
Yeah.
Because I guess I feel like a kindred spirit to the guy. I know what he's going through. I know where he's coming from.
Ditto.
And I know where he is in the process. And I suspect that you're feeling the same way. And that's interesting that you say it, because I got to say, man, that's exactly what I feel. I feel if anybody's going to be that guy, it'll have to be an outsider like Ross, who's now moved outside the system to do this.
Yeah.
And because the guys in the system, the Leslies and the Ralphs, aren't getting the job done right now. And it may be because they don't want to, or it may be because the New York Times won't let them, or
I think
whatever.
that's it. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Which is stupid for the New York Times on a business level, because it's selling papers.
Yeah.
I mean,
oh my God, yeah.
This is, I mean, the sheer idiocy. And it's funny because every time a television show, whether it's Fox News, CNN, it doesn't matter. Not these idiotic documentaries that have the same people on every same UFO show.
Oh, I know.
You know, but I mean, we're talking real outlets here. Their numbers spike huge when they talk UFOs. They spike, and we're not talking a couple 100,000 people. We're talking a couple million people per time.
Yeah,
and,
I know.
And it's obviously a moneymaker.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, that's what's frustrating. You know, if I write a very well-received article, the most I'll probably get is like 35,000 reads, which is a lot. Okay, but it ain't New York Times numbers. The numbers they're putting on the board are pretty big, and I wish they would use their ability to command the public's attention a little more aggressively even than what they're doing.
Right.
But they're not.
We've got about 45 seconds here.
All right. I want to look up something here.
Hey, Alien Critter, I'm trying to push my radio station in Mississauga, Ontario, to get Justin Trudeau on, because I know he's been read in.
Yeah, well, what do you? Okay, hold the phone. How do you know that?
I'll tell you at the next break. How about that?
Okay.
All right, big thank you to Lori, to Snakes on a UFO, and Cat Chaser for the amazing super chats. It's a great way to support what we do on a nightly basis here on Spaced Out Radio. Thank you to all the veterans who are listening to this show, and to every one of our regulars who are here nightly. We love you. Get your horns up. Bumblefoot's coming right now.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio is underway. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Want to say hello to everyone tuning us in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, and digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Radiogoniometer. Yeah, I'm only saying that once, as the Clam sets a password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. From Trails of the Saucers on Medium, we have journalist Bryce Zabel with us talking UFOs and the narrative all night long. And Bryce, I'm going to work in an audience question here from Marie down in Los Angeles. She's wondering if you've seen the film The 11th Green. She has many questions to the government after watching this film just the other night. Called it a real cerebral movie.
You know, I just saw that pop up on your screen, and I'm sitting here going, I wanted to write her and respond to it. But the last time I tried to do that, I ended up popping off your screen. So I'm not doing that. But Marie, great question. I just saw it myself a month ago. I really enjoyed it. And, you know, I think you probably know that I'm the creator of the Dark Skies show. And I found it to be very dark skiesian is how how I would describe it, because it's weaving that, the history and portraying real people, in this case, Eisenhower and Obama and all that, which is what Dark Skies tried very much to do. So, yeah, I liked it, and I liked it a lot. I thought they accomplished a lot for probably not very much money. I think Campbell Scott is one of the more interesting actors of his generation. I enjoyed seeing that. And what I thought, I can't remember who wrote it, and I don't know that I know them anyway. But I did find it to be extremely informed about ufological events, which is from history, and to weave them kind of seamlessly into its narrative. So I really enjoyed it, and I would recommend it for people. It doesn't have to be 100% true to be a good film. And if you know your ufological history, folks, this is a good one to watch. Well, The 11th Green, which is a kind of a weird title, which has to do with the golf course that Eisenhower's property is looking over, I think, is what the reference is. But check it out. It's pretty good. I got it on Amazon, I think.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. Bryce, one of the things we are seeing in the field of ufology these days is not so much from all the people that are now involved and have broken this subject down to quite a minute detail.
Yeah.
But we're seeing a lot of anger. I see it in our chat rooms on a nightly basis from our listeners. They're done with the stories. They're done with the narratives. They're done with cover-ups. They're done with the experiencers' anecdotal evidence. They're just done. And after 70-plus years of this happening, I don't blame the audience or the people who love this subject getting fed up with another experiencer's story, another blip on a YouTube video that is supposed to be a UFO, a video of a UFO, then being told that there were 14 others before this flying around. I mean, we see it all the time. What do you think of this frustration that is happening with people who want this subject to be done? Let's either crap or get off the pot when it comes to disclosure.
I'm angry. I'm really pissed off. I'm frustrated. It's like Bill Clinton said, I feel your pain. I'm not happy. I'm not a happy camper. And I've gotten more angry every year. And I'm probably as angry as I've ever been right now. So I get it. I'm not as young as I used to be, right? None of us are. But I remember, when I first came to Hollywood, I was the youngest guy in every room, and that's not true anymore, right? I would like to shuffle off this planet of ours at a time when I at least know what is going on. And I am getting increasingly frustrated by that. And by the way, on the experiencer thing, not to open up a sore point or to pick a fight with anybody, but I'm a speaker at the IUFOC on Sunday, the 12th. Yeah, Sunday the 12th. So last night I was watching Lou Elizondo do his speech for opening night, and he had a flash of anger. And it was interesting to me because he's such a, calm kind of guy who's learned how to measure and meter out his speech. But he's a little irritated about the whole experiencer thing because he's saying it's not data. We can blow this thing open with data right now. And why aren't we? And I got to tell you, the whole conversation would be over if just take those 3 freaking videos that we've seen little snippets of. I understand that they've shown pretty much the full thing to various congressmen and senators in briefings, the more HD versions that go on for 40 minutes, and they're blowing people's minds. Why can't we see those? I mean, let's just get this thing on the road. So, yeah, you are right. Your listeners have and viewers have every reason to be upset. The only thing that we can't do right now is we got them where we want them. It's on topic now. It's okay to talk about it, and we need to push. We need to push like activists do. I mean, people didn't turn away from the civil rights movement and say, yeah, it's kind of hard and I'm a little frustrated. We don't have our rights yet. They just said, they doubled down. Well, we got to double down right now. I guess that's it.
But how do you double down against a government that is holding these national secrets? And we don't even
you don't double. I mean, look, you're not going to take the government on, but you know what? It only takes a whistleblower, or it takes somebody leaking some of those videos, or it takes a deathbed confession, or, I mean, I don't know. Dolan and I played this game for a year while we were writing AD. I mean, for all that, what would happen if, as an example, Colin Powell is on his deathbed and he goes, I'm tired of holding this secret, and he lays out what he knows. Well, that would get the ball rolling. So somebody is available to do that. And you talked about our friend Ross Coulthart, and he's talking to some pretty heavyweight people and putting 2 and 2 together. And some of these people are coming at him with some really phenomenal information. And I think he's just taking his time sifting through some of it right now. We may be getting answers from a lot of different fronts soon, and I hope that's true.
My only concern about Ross Coulthart, and this is nothing that I haven't told him in private conversations, and you and I, for the record, had this same private conversation.
Sure.
I really hope that he watches whom he speaks to and whom he aligns himself with, because this field is so filled with arrogance at times. It is filled with people who are pushing their own agenda and their own brand and value, that they're not worried about the truth. They're worried about what is in this for me. And Ross doesn't seem to be coming at it from that angle. And I really hope that he does a lot of his homework as he goes through this maze of ufology, to realize that there's a lot of shysters out there who have zero interest in Ross Coulthart or the narrative. They're wondering how they can be a leech and tag along, so that way their name is included in that phenomena, whatever story he breaks.
Well, that's, that goes with the territory. But I'll tell you something. In my conversations with the man, I think he's one of the smartest, cookies I've talked to. And I don't think you pull one over on this guy. I think what's interesting about his style, he's disarming because he's a charming Aussie, right? And you're Canadian, I'm American, but Americans like the Aussies. We
same as us.
We think we like them.
They're part of the Commonwealth,
right? And I like where he's coming from, and I think, but it doesn't. The fact that he's a nice guy to talk to doesn't mean that he's not thinking very carefully about what people are telling him and why they're telling him. He just keeps it kind of close to the chest here. And I look for him to, as you said, break a few big stories in the future.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. I really am seeing where he goes. But the public's eyes on this and the frustration that the public has for this topic, they don't know where the news is coming from. What they do know through all of this, if anything, is you can't trust the U.S. military or what comes out of the Pentagon. Because now, after years of ufology saying we can't trust the spooks, we can't trust Washington, right. Now all of a sudden all the spooks are coming out saying, trust us.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's weird. And by the way, I see on your screen, Fat Bass is asking, what if China disclosed first? Which is a great question. Dolan and I kicked that around and let's face it, you could have a disclosure race, because if the United States intelligence community got word that, say, either Putin or China was about to go first, and then we would have to ask ourselves whether it was good or bad for them to go first, and we might want to scoop them. And by the way, it doesn't have to be a nation. It could, well, I guess the Vatican is a nation, but it could be the Vatican, it could be the Pope, it could be, other figures. And I don't know that China has the motivation to go first. I think I'd buy Putin going before China, to be honest with you. But I don't know. But I do. Brazil could make a statement, but it wouldn't be as important if the big three went first. That would be cool, and it would get things going.
You mentioned that you're very much siding with the public on this, and you understand their frustration. I mean, where do they find a straight answer now? I mean, we have a field that is just filled with a lot of, how can I put it, rhetoric that is going on, a lot of rehashing of stories, whether it's on UFO Twitter, whether it's on shows like this. I mean, you can even admit, because you watch. I mean, even a lot of podcasts and YouTube channels out there now are starting to get very foul and rude towards people in the community because they've had enough as well.
Yeah, and you know what? I don't want to become one of those guys that just rehashes his old favorite stories from podcast to podcast. I actually took a year off. That's probably why we haven't seen each other. I just said I need to do a little more thinking interior than I need to be speaking. So I took a year off to think more than speak. I did my speaking in Trail of the Saucers as magazine articles. I think there is a danger to that, where we sort of become our own echo chamber. And I think echo chamber is a really valid concept for what ufology has always been in danger of becoming, where we tell ourselves the same stories. We've got to reach out to other people. We've got to bring other people in. That's why when I saw Ross's book In Plain Sight, I thought, well, this is good, because he's not. I didn't know who this guy was when I read it, and it was nice to have a fresh voice. We've got to get the fresh voices in there. We've got to stop just saying the same old things, the same old ways, and we have to progress this discussion in a frankly a profound way right now, because the planet's falling apart, right? It's one of the articles I wrote most recently that got a lot of traction was something called Code Red for UFO disclosure, because we're at Code Red on the planet. What does that mean? I mean, the planet is losing its ability to sustain us. At the same time, we're still grappling with this nonsense about whether we're going to tell ourselves what's really going on with the UFO issue. That is incompatible with our best interests. Now, that's what scares me, because I think it is possible that the reason it's been so difficult and continues to be so difficult is that the truth, such as, I put truth in quotes because it's obviously a tough thing to figure out exactly, but maybe it's not good news. Maybe it's not sweetness and light. Maybe, and you can look at any of these things, and look at it from both points of view. Let's take the fact that they're seen near nuclear weapons from time to time, and more often than we'd like to believe. Okay, if you're a pro Stephen Greer kind of guy, you would say, well, that's because they want to save us from ourselves, right? They want to lead us away from these warlike ways. All right, well, that's one interpretation. But the other could be, I'm a little concerned if somebody's looking at nuclear weapons and turning them off and on. I don't think that's probably designed to create confidence in our even the security of our weapons. So I don't know. I just am concerned that the news might be a little bad.
Well, but here's the thing. We have people like Dr. Stephen Greer charging thousands of dollars for these CE5 contact stories. We see people coming out of the blue, whether it's Demi Lovato or somebody along that line, all of a sudden posing as ufologists. Look, Demi Lovato has in total over 104 million followers on her social media platforms. That is good for the subject. But is the content there? Should she be the voice? Should it not be some veteran ufologist leading her around so she can learn about it rather than being the star of the show? And this is where a lot of people in ufology and even outside of ufology look, oh man, really? Demi Lovato now? You know
what? It's like, I don't need Rob Lowe to explain UFOs to me. I don't need Demi Lovato to explain UFOs to me. And listen, I'm a child of Hollywood. At least for the last 3 decades. And it still makes me want to tear my fists out of the ceiling when I hear, oh, there's going to be a new UFO show. and we've got Demi Lovato to host it. It just makes me go, we're doing this the wrong way. A better model for a show and something that I may put some energy into would be, I don't know how many people watch the show The Circus on Showtime, but it's 4 journalists on a weekly basis, sort of, kicking around what's going on, but not in a meet the press kind of way, but in kind of a hipper way. Why isn't there a show like The Circus done for UFOs where because there's enough new stuff coming out all the time and there's enough historical stuff. Why can't we have our own shows now? Why do they have to be podcasts? Why can't they also be in the sort of the broadcast cable satellite world where they get a lot of traction? So I think we got to move forward in a lot of different ways, and that's one of them.
Well, I mean, we can move forward, but I mean, how do you get people to take it seriously? Is this where somebody like Knapp has to start hosting something like Robert Stack did with Unknown Mysteries, No,
I don't think so, because that would feel like a lot of the same. We've seen that, right? We have seen that. What we have to see is the UFO/UAP version of some other kind of shows. Like, nobody thinks twice that there's a Meet the Press on every week talking about the events of the last week. Why isn't there a UFO show like that? Not aimed at the already converted, but aimed at the large population. Well, it's going to happen eventually. But I don't think we should wait for full-on disclosure before it happens. It's got to happen now. Now, it's interesting because I will tell you this. I think those shows are waiting to happen, and that kind of knowledge is waiting to happen. When I was doing Dark Skies, we had kind of it was wild because a lot of the people that were my executives at the studio and the network on that show went on to run networks, and some of them are still running networks. And at the time we were doing Dark Skies, it was more like, well, you guys are a little bit crazy, me and my partner, Brent Friedman. And, if you want to go do that, it's great. I mean, maybe we'll get an audience. But they were smart people. And I bet today, if I were to run into them in the grocery store in Brentwood or something, they'd say, hey, man, I've been reading all this stuff about UFOs and, what's going on? They would ask me right now what's going on, right? So I think we should we need to take advantage of that. I see someone likes my poofy hair. I'm sorry. I don't know what to do. I could get a hat.
No, your hair looks great, man. Your hair looks great.
But, I just, we're not there yet, but we stand at the precipice of being there, I think. I really do.
Okay, so if you were to do a show like The Circus, or I hate to use the Canadian version, we call it W5 up here. All right.
Okay.
Who would be on your team? Who would be your panel?
Well, there's a tendency to go to the usual suspects, right? And I think it would be better to do some of the non-usual suspects, or at least to mix it up. So I guess what I'd want to do, I'd want to have a couple of people that are on every week, because people like characters, right? I mean, whether it's a drama series or a news series, people like, why do we watch? We watch because we like these people and we want to hear what they have to say. So I think would it be Demi Lovato? Not in my world, it wouldn't. It would be certainly lovely, intellectually interesting and compelling people. And then I'd have people cycling through it as well. So you get different voices. And so could George Knapp come through? Absolutely. Would he be the host? Probably not at this point, because I think you're kind of looking for you're just looking for a more edgy vibe. I think it's, but edgy in a smart way, not edgy in a let's go get Rob Lowe and his kids to drive around the country in a van and do UFOs. That's not what I'm looking to do.
But we saw that also with Ozzy and his kids.
Yeah. Oh, this is a great story then. So I got asked to do Ozzy, not Ozzy, but his kid. What's his
Jack?
Jack. Yes. Okay. So I was asked to analyze something for Jack Osborne and his gang of stoners who were sitting on their couches, right? And I look at this thing and I thought right away, okay, that's not a UFO. It's just some video of people going, oh, man, look at that. That's really wild. I call up my friend Ben Hansen. I say, I want to send this to you. And we talk about it. And he goes, oh, those are guys in parachutes with their flares. That's how those things are done, right? So I'm about to go on. And I say to the producer as I'm waiting, I think I can tell you how that video was made, et cetera, et cetera. There's a long pause. And she says, we don't want you to do that. Our people already believe in UFOs, so they don't want. You're not being asked on to tell us that that's not a good video. You're here to just tell us that it's a great video. And I thought, this is wrong. So I do think we have some work to do. If we're gonna try to, we need honest appraisals of everything.
Absolutely. And Bryce, I'm going to get you to hold on right there. Hard to believe we're already halfway through tonight's show. We have Bryce Zabel for another half hour here on Spaced Out Radio. Coming up next is UFO Twitter and the Internet of Ufology. The best or worst thing that has ever happened in the UFO field. We'll find out from Bryce Zabel right after this on the Mighty SOR. Might as well fire it right up, and we're already here.
Yeah, we're rocking and rolling here right now.
Man, this is flying by. This is a great show tonight. Great show.
I don't even know how much time you do. How much do you do every night?
I do 3 hours a night.
Oh, do you really?
Yeah.
That must just crush you sometimes.
There are days. Last week was a really hard week. I have to really, really watch my schedule.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, there are times when it's after the show, after I've edited the show for our radio stations and everything like that, where all of a sudden I'll take a phone call and I'm on the phone until 2, 3 in the morning, and then I still have my daytime job I have to go to as well. And there are times where I don't
even know what your daytime job is. What is your
I work in financing.
All right.
Yeah. So it's tough that sometimes I need to I can screw myself up for the week. Ben from UFO Garage says your hair and beard are epic.
See, I'm not quite. I think part of me wants to thank UFO Garage, and part of me wants to say, what exactly do you mean by that?
If you saw Ben and Joe. If you saw Ben and Joe, he's got hair down to here braided and a beard just as long.
Okay.
And Ben, two of the great, honestly, you would have a lot of fun with them on their podcast. We highly, highly support Ben and Joe from UFO Garage. There's not a lot
I'll tell you one thing I will tell anybody who's making I'm just happy at my age to have hair, so I like to show it off. I've still got hair, and I like that. That's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, you know what? They're actually I had Lou Elizondo on a couple months ago, and I fired Lou up a little bit. I got him mad on the air.
Oh, what did you get him mad on?
No, I just let him release. I like my first question to him was, I said, Lou, you look tired, and how is this on your wife and kids? Oh. And that's what started it. And I played, as a journalist, we got something here. We got to keep going. And that's what we did. And then the next day, Lou was scheduled for an hour with Ben and Joe from UFO Garage. And I had told him, I said, Lou, you're going to have just a great time with these guys, and just be prepared for a lot of fun. Have fun, enjoy them. And Lou ended up staying for like 2.5 hours with them. He was having such a blast talking everything from beards to cars and UFOs. I mean, Ben and Joe did just a fantastic job with that. Fantastic job.
So that's Ben and Joe, our UFO Garage? Yeah. Hey, guys, I hope you're listening. Thank you. Good luck with your podcast.
Yeah. No, you would check them out.
I will.
They're a growing audience, and Ben actually is the guy who's creating our brand new look website, which will launch next Monday. So that's what he does for his daytime job. And so he is working extra hard here because he's about to become a first-time father at the end of the month. And so he's like racing around trying to get everything done beforehand. But we love Ben and Joe around here. They're high-quality people, high-quality people. I got to meet them a couple years ago. I knew nothing of them, and then I got to meet them a couple years ago thanks to Lori and Fenton because they were podcasting at UFO Con in San Francisco. And then just seeing these guys, I mean, they don't take themselves too seriously. The only gripe I have, like Chad Smith says here, is they're only on once a week. That's the only thing that bugs me about their show, is that it's once a week.
It's hard to do nightly.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, boy, that's a commitment.
You know what, though? I have nothing better to do in my life, man. Everybody in my house has been asleep for an hour and a half. What am I supposed to do? I could be flipping through the channels for hours upon end, or I could have some fun and talk about subjects I love.
I think it's really cool, and I admire it because I know I like, look, I enjoy doing on-air things, and it's interesting to me, but I can't say that it's without a price. Each one of them you have to sort of get yourself up for, right? You can't phone it in. You gotta wake up. You gotta get your head in the game. You got to be prepared. Otherwise, you end up saying things you don't even mean because you're just filling the air. That's the only part where I get into trouble sometimes in the later part of an interview where I'm just, I'm just kind of sagging a little bit. Yeah. And then I'm just filling time and I got to keep, which I'm doing now.
Hold on, boss, because we're going to get going right here.
Let's do this.
Past the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. We continue on with the UFO narrative tonight. On the show, our guest tonight from Medium Trail of the Saucers, journalist Bryce Zabel. And Bryce, we're going to get right into the internet here.
Yeah.
Has the internet been beneficial or more of a detractor to what's really happening in ufology? I think it's great that we see on YouTube hundreds, if not thousands, of UFO channels. Everything from people trying to do their best work to people who are putting up a bunch of CGI and fake films for clickbait and getting the momentum and building their channels from there. We see a lot of podcasts. There's literally, in North America alone, I believe about 4,000 podcasts on everything from UFOs to ET contact, and we haven't even got into the paranormal or Bigfoot or anything like that. Then we have the monster known as UFO Twitter, where there's a lot of angst and anger, and basically if you say anything against Tom DeLonge or the To the Stars Academy, you're going to get shredded to bits. I mean, has the internet been a good move for trying to push ufology forward?
I mean, when you were starting to phrase the question has it been a good thing or is it a bad thing? I was going to answer yes. I mean, because the answer is it's both, and it's always both simultaneously. For my own benefit, though, I have to say it's too much. I can't keep up with it. It's too much. I can't watch all the YouTubes. I can't listen to every podcast. I can't read all the tweets. I can't absorb all the information. It's too much. And so I do think it is still important to have people sort of curating some of the better stuff, because I don't want to waste my time trying to figure out what's right and what's wrong. And, I need a little help as a listener, as a viewer, or whatever. However, having said that, I don't. Yes, if you tweet about something, you might get trashed, and I've certainly been trashed by people, and I guess that's goes with the business. For me, though, it's just I think I'd like some of the bigger established names of media to get in this game, because they're sort of, they have the resources to throw at some of these things to pre-vet them. I just can't keep up. I keep running into people who say, hey, have you heard this show? Or did you see that video? Or do you follow this guy? And my answer is, no, I guess I missed it. It's just too much.
Yeah. And not to sound insulting, I get hit with those daily. And you feel bad, that you can't get to them all. You can't.
But you can't. I talk to people like Dolan and Coulthard, and these are people with thousands of emails in their box. How do they get to them all? I can't. It's not that I don't want to talk to people. I just can't. I can't deal with 3,000 emails in a day. Who does that? It's just too much for me personally. And so particularly when you're trying to sort of create some of your own content too, we've turned the whole world into content creators, and that's okay, but not if you're creating fake content and passing it off as true content. I don't like that. I'm not a fan of anybody doing that, and I wish they would stop.
And I think that's a fair assessment of everything. But now that there's money on the line with social media and YouTube channels and hey, we're broadcasting live on YouTube right now as we speak, let alone terrestrial radio. I mean, you have no choice if you are a business. You have to get the message out there. I mean, me being a radio guy, I understand that I have a face for radio and a voice for print. But I have no choice but to go on YouTube in order to make what radio stations aren't picking up. It's funny because television has learned there's a lot of money in UFOs.
Yes.
Newspapers have learned, for the most part, there's a lot of money in UFOs.
But here's the problem. I'm a guest expert. I'm not supposed to talk about the program yet, but I'm a guest expert on 2 documentaries that are coming up. And yet, on both of those documentaries, I knew things that sort of should have been said in the documentary because they're factual parts of that, and yet they didn't want them in the documentaries because they said, "No, the audience already believes all this, and we just want to give them what they want." So TV may have discovered UFOs, but it doesn't mean they're all looking at them journalistically, and which is too bad.
True.
Yeah. And by the way, just to harken back to something we talked about earlier, one of the reasons something like the debrief is a good thing is that if you like Tim and the gang, and you sort of have the feeling that they are curating and they are sifting through information, and that at least what the things they're writing about, they put some time into it. And I like that because it makes me feel better about reading it.
And the fact is, let's get back to your comment here, because Soler makes a comment in our chat room. It's true that everyone has become a content creator, and it's muddied the waters. So how does somebody who is looking from the outside in on this subject find those clear waters where they're getting proper information and not just a one-sided narrative that this is the way it is? If you don't believe me, you're getting wrong information.
I don't know. I don't know. How do I do it personally? I have to go to people that I know and trust, and I have kind of my own hierarchy of people. So, maybe some of your people would disagree that I shouldn't be paying attention to George Knapp, for example, but I found him to be a reliable source, so I listen to him. I can't keep up with everything. And there's always somebody who knows more than I do about something, particularly a case or something. I found that the internet is a pretty poor way to try to, I was trying to get up to speed on, say, the Travis Walton case 3 months ago. And there just wasn't a really good source for it. There's a lot of people, on the internet throwing out their views of it that you had to sift through. And it was it wasn't presented well, a lot of it. And then you had Travis's book. There wasn't that other piece of content that somebody had put out. So I try to write the things that I can't find, I guess is what I do. But it's hard. It's just hard.
But Travis Walton is a good example right now of the UFO community trying to tear down this man as a liar. Because Mike Rogers, who is his former brother-in-law, went off the deep end about some business deal that seemed to not go through between the two. And it came down to finances. And now all of a sudden, Travis Walton's a liar. He's a fake. He is never told the truth about this subject. I mean, are we eating our own for no reason?
Well, but the one thing I will say that I enjoyed most about working with Richard Dolan is he's a historian. Right. My father was a history teacher. I consider myself as much a historian as a journalist, as a dramatist, I guess. And what the problem you're referring to is not a new one, right? Eating our own. I mean, ufology has been eating their own since the 40s. I mean, this is just the way it is. And it's like everything else, it's been accelerated by the internet. And what's going on with Travis right now, you've got to consider the sources. Mike Rogers, for example, just to even look at his comments, you have to question where he's coming from. Just as a judge of character, you have to be really careful about that. I don't happen to look. I'm not going to say that Travis Walton is the perfect case. It's not. It's a good case. I was involved in it. I was a radio reporter when it was happening, and I remember my audience loved anything I could throw out about it. I don't know about it, but I do think we have to, we have to always be ready to, as your person here, how do you know if someone is a hoaxer? Well, the truth of the matter is that's something that's a big problem. People want to be popular. They want to get some eyeballs on them or their work, and they hoax. Hoaxing is bad. Don't hoax. And when you see someone who is clearly hoaxed, you have to call it out. But, boy, I think you're right. There is a lot of just nastiness out there, and I don't like it.
And that's the big point. I mean, we're not just out to say this person's a liar, this person's a fake anymore. There are many people out there, whether it's UFO Twitter, YouTube, wherever, who are just out to seek and destroy. I mean,
let me ask you a question, though,
yes.
Because this is also interesting to me, but let's go back to the narrative thing, right?
Sure.
What should the narrative be? I mean, what are we really saying here? What is the UFO narrative right now, and what should it be, though? What should be happening?
I think in a perfect world, if journalists could be leading this story, if we did proper investigation into it, the fact that we haven't had a lot of investigative journalists outside of Ross Coulthart, outside of George Knapp, I think has caused a lot of troubles. I think that even with the New York Times, not pushing the story forward, it creates a lot of loopholes. I'm disappointed to see that there has been no counterpoint in the story, because we've seen a lot of points, whether it's David Fravor, Alex Dietrich, or Lou Elizondo and Chris Mellon, but we haven't seen a lot of counterpoints that journalism is favored for. When I went to school, now back in my day,
right.
I was always taught that every story should have a point and a counterpoint to it.
Yeah.
And let the reader, the audience, the listener decide what side of the fence they want to take. And today I think we have broken the UFO subject down to such finite detail that it's impossible to try and get a true story out anymore.
But now let me give kind of a nuance on top of that, because you're right. That is And it's what I used to be a television news reporter in my previous incarnation in local news and then at CNN. And I would describe the structure of a television news story tended to break down to some say yes, some say no, we say maybe. In other words, your story has a premise. You go out and interview somebody who says yes, and then you find somebody who will say no. You give them equal value, and then the reporter does a stand-up where they stand there and say, well, I guess we'll just never know, or whatever they say. And that is not good for UFO journalism, because what it allows you to do is you go out and you're looking into a story, and then you say, well, we better get the other side. Let's go get a skeptic. Let's go find Robert Schaefer, or let's get Neil deGrasse Tyson to come on the air, or something like that. And some things are just true. And they don't need to have a skeptic, right? Some things just need to be discussed. The Nimitz thing doesn't need a Nimitz skeptic. It needs more people commenting on it as to what happened and
Absolutely.
Why did it happen.
Absolutely. But I mean, you look at the skeptics that they are using, whether it's Mick West or Neil deGrasse Tyson, these are people who have zero interest but to bring shame to the subject. That's all they're doing. That's all they're using. They're not taking a different angle where somebody, say, like you or I, could come on there and, I'm just picking two names, could come on there and say, well, you know what we're seeing out of these videos is great, but what we really need to know is where's the rest of them?
Yeah.
Okay, why to question what has already come out?
So part of the answer to narrative is, do the people listening tonight, and yourself and me and the larger ufological crowd, do we or don't we see the UFO disclosure situation as something that requires activism? All right? The civil rights movement required activism. It required rallies. It required knocking on doors, right? And the same could be said for ending the Vietnam War. It involved marches on Washington and things, right? Not taking over the Capitol with guns, but peacefully assembling and telling people to look into something. Now, so far, the UFO movement has never been able to seriously do that. And my question is, knowing what we know now, is it time for activism? Well, because that may be what the rest of the narrative needs to be.
But the problem is, when you look at UFO activism, you have people taking just one side. Okay, right. There's, especially on UFO Twitter, where, as Lou Elizondo has mentioned many a times to me and on other shows, that they're treating him like a demigod. You know, and you can't do that. You have to be able to see the big picture. But I think what frustrates the community, to answer your question even more, and you and I have talked about this privately a couple of years ago, we see in ufology, you can be whatever you want. If you want to be a journalist, even though you've never worked in journalism before, you just title yourself as a UFO journalist.
Oh, that's true. That's true, and that's a little weird.
We've seen fake scientists come across that have been debunked. We've seen fake researchers that have come in, fake government officials. Look at the mess right now with this Anjali lady who claims to be the ultimate experiencer.
Was that the one that had the
press conference?
Okay, first of all, I don't know what I looked at that. I was about 7 seconds into it and said, "This is bullshit." Excuse me, can I even say that? I guess I can say it. It was like, come on, if this person was authentic in any way, they would have conducted themselves differently.
Bingo.
Bingo. So, sometimes you can't just say, well, could be, might, let's go get one point of view and let's get the other point. No, I mean, just to look at that person, you go, this is not a credible person. Show me your, if we're going to hold Bob Lazar up and say, show us all your credentials, where's her credentials?
Well, I mean, John here, who's my, for all intents and purposes, he's my UFO news guy.
Right.
And he says people are terrified of being duped, so they attack anything that looks even a smidge suspicious is jumped on. It's ego self-defense.
Yeah. Well, nobody wants to be duped. And people have been duped. I don't think this Angeli thing, I don't know enough about it to comment any more than to say I didn't buy it. But people have been getting duped going back to, the alien autopsy, going back to, the picture of the alien at the museum that so many people fell for, and it turned out to be just a kid. People are getting duped. And the frustration is they're getting duped by people who know better and are doing it on purpose. You're probably well familiar with the Snopes site, where there's some kind of weird piece of news out there. You go to Snopes and they tell you what the real truth is, and you can discredit a lot of these stories. UFOs need a Snopes site. I think we need something where there's a credible team of people trying to lay out the truth about certain things, so that Angeli, for example, would be on our UFO Snopes site, and you could go there and go, oh, well, there's the answer to that. And we don't really have anything like that, I don't think. Maybe there is. I haven't seen it. But I think we need to let me put it this way. We're in a terrible problem right now in the world, and we need to get disclosure of this UFO thing over and done with. And, we're going to, as they say, we're going to have to level up.
Oh, very true. Very true. We're going to have to level up. Can we do that, though, with the amount of differing opinion out there in UFO land?
Yes, because it's sort of like if everybody in UFO land, you know what? We can't just appeal to UFO land, to use that phrase. The whole thing has to be taken to not just the streets, but to average people. So, for example, when I find a book that I really like, I buy 3 or 4 copies of it and I give it to friends. And I say, I want you to read this book, right? We have to involve other people, right? And what I've said for years, and it's very true. I used to be treated like the drunk uncle at the wedding. All right. I'd be the guy talking about UFOs, and people would say, well, there goes Bryce again. He's talking about UFOs. He's a pretty normal guy most of the time, but then occasionally he goes off the deep end. He loves that shit, and now they don't look at me that way. So something has changed, Dave. I think that's what's interesting. Something has changed. I don't get looked at like the drunk uncle anymore. Now I get people who used to sort of tolerate that kind of talk, who, like, we'll go out to dinner. I'll go out to dinner with my wife with friends or a couple I've never met before. And as soon as they find out that I'm the guy that created Dark Skies, or I'm the guy that did this or whatever, they ask me questions. They are hungry to know about this topic. So we have to, if you're frustrated with the UFO Twitter crowd, stop talking to them and start talking to average people, because that's where the battle for acceptance is going to be waged.
But the problem is, we see a lot of people out there in the field who've been here for years giving a lot of, yeah, but this person's a good guy. They may lie about their credentials, but this is a good lady. This is somebody we should be promoting, even though their topic is BS, or they've been caught lying through their pants. We see the UFO public and the elders of this community doing that. I'll give you a quick example of that. I had someone who borrowed a piece of my show. Now, our YouTube channel is monetized. This person's channel is monetized. They took a snippet from our show without permission, and we are copyright, and they used it on their channel. I gave him a strike on YouTube. Okay, this person went all over UFO Twitter, claiming what a jerk I am, and how bad of an egotistical jerk I was, that I would hurt his channel for doing this. All he had to do was ask permission.
Right.
And yet I had members of that elder community literally calling me up and ripping me for being an a-hole to this person. And I'm trying to explain, hold on, he stole my product. He stole my product without permission. Where am I supposed to prevent my product or protect my product? And this is what we have, is we have that person calls him a journalist. Oh, but he's a nice person. We shouldn't give that person a hard time because he's nice or she's nice. And this is what we're doing.
We have, okay, so you're really saying...
We got 40 seconds, by the way.
Okay. Well, I would just say, at the end of the day, we're going to disagree, and what we have to learn is what your parents taught you. How to disagree with someone without being disagreeable. It's basic common courtesy and manners, and we have to bring that to this wild western frontier. But again, I don't want to go to my grave not knowing the truth because we can't get along with each other. Okay? It's time to be better than we've been and to get the job done.
Well, I will tell you this as we go to break. If I'm a government official with secrets about this and I take a quick look into ufology, I would say it's a bunch of wingnuts that are gathered around and shouldn't be trusted. And that's the truth of the matter. All right.
Might not be wrong.
All right, we'll get to more questions when we come back. Bryce Zabel, the UFO Narrative continues. We got Bryce for another half an hour, and then Dave 101 at the bottom of the hour. We'll be back on Spaced Out Radio. I am so pumped up about this show tonight, man.
Oh, man, that's very nice. Thank you.
If you got to step away...
Because, that we're raising good issues that bother me to this day because, let me tell you, I don't know that this is the perfect example, but it is an example. When I first started out in drama, all right, I was on a show that I had created called Kay O'Brien, and the person who I was working with was a guy named Bill Asher, who was my mentor. Bill is the guy that directed the first couple of seasons of I Love Lucy. He married Elizabeth Montgomery. He was the guy that directed the Beach Blanket Bingo movies and all that. He's a great guy, and he was my mentor. And I remember getting really upset about a scene in a script and just... going, oh my God, this is such a disaster. What are we going to do here? And Bill was very calm, and he just said, well, it's not going to be in the final product. I just don't see it. Right? He was able to calmly assess that situation. And I think that what we have to do about the really crazy sides, not everybody on Twitter that talks about UFOs are bad people, because I have 8,000 or 9,000 people, and they're pretty nice to me, most of them, and they're thoughtful, most of them. So it's not all the one. So what we have to be able to do is not see that, but see what matters,
right?
and keep our eyes on the ball here, and that's moving the disclosure truth ahead.
Right.
So,
by the way,
I'm looking what Anne Celine has written there.
Yeah, don't answer that right now.
I won't. But what are all these dollar signs here? What does that mean?
Those are what we call super chats, where people can donate to the show if they choose.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, God bless them.
Yeah, we're very thankful. Very, very thankful.
Enough of those, and you can quit your day job. Oh, by the way, the other thing, what you talk about eating your young, I always have to laugh every time somebody goes, well, they're just doing that so they're making a fortune off their books. Nobody makes a fortune off their books, and nobody makes a fortune at a conference. I think, if I'm not mistaken, the IUFOC is paying $200 to their speakers. How many people are going to have $200 change their life? Do we really have to put down a speaker at a conference because somebody made $200 and they took 10 hours out of their day to make a presentation? That seems like they made $20 an hour, which is minimum wage, right? So I just think we got to stop being so mean to everybody.
Yeah, I don't see that happening right now.
I know, but I whatever.
Trust me, that's what Dave 101 is going to be about.
All right. Well, good. Set everybody straight, my friend.
Well, we'll do our best. We will do our best, man, as we got about, let's see here, 1, 2, just under 3 minutes here.
Well, I would just like to say I have consumed an entire bottle of Smart Water while doing your show.
Well, you got 3 minutes if you need.
There's my plug. No, I'm good. I'm here.
Me too, man. Me too. I really appreciate you doing this tonight, man. Really do.
I see somebody goes, Bryce does not have a YouTube channel, no super chats. I don't even know how to do a super chat, but I do have a YouTube channel where I put all the the AD videos and the Dark Skies videos. So if somebody's never seen Dark Skies before, I encourage them to go to my YouTube channel and watch all the clips, because I put them on there because I thought, since they've made it so hard to watch you have to buy the DVD set to watch Dark Skies, which again, I point out I don't make a dime from, and I enjoy people watching it because it's a great way to watch it. But you can't stream it right now. So I feel like I'll give people some clips and they can at least watch it for free. So I hope people will do that. I don't even know what a YouTube chat is.
Well, when you're live, it opens up a chat room.
Yeah.
And so people can, who are subscribed to your channel, they can come in and chat live during the show.
You know, I kind of wonder about that because right now I'm a guest and it's easier for me. I pop in, you handle all the details, and I pop out, right? Whereas if I were to start doing my own channel, that might be work.
Well,
I don't know.
You may have to have a little ADD on it, like I do.
Yeah.
Or ADHD or whatever it is. Hi, Justin. B. Hoff is wondering in the chat room. He goes, what kind of crime mysteries are you solving with that board behind you?
Oh, that is the board where I break my movie and TV projects. Those are cards. Each card is a scene. I've always, I just don't break my movies and TV projects on computer because you can't see the big picture. I like to be able to go to that board when I'm working, because you usually work collaborating with somebody, and I like to be able to take that card down and move it and physically, and I have very neat handwriting, so I like to write my own cards. I use different colored cards. I use different colored pens. I use little labels. Anything to help me see the big picture, because part of the problem of writing a film is you first have to see the big picture, then you have to see the structure, and only after you've seen the structure can you get into actually writing it. If you start writing it before you actually understand what it's about, it's almost doomed to failure, or at least will take you 3 times as long.
I'm going to get you to hold on right there. Thank you, Mandingo, Ann, Fat Bass, Politically Incorrect, Marie, Lori, Snakes, and Cat Chaser. Here we go with hour 3.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Kicking off the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for tuning us in. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Just do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club Radio Goniometer. Yeah, I'm not saying that twice, but the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. For the final time tonight, we bring in journalist Bryce Zabel. You can find him on Medium at Trails of the Saucers. This man does fantastic work in breaking down the UFO narrative. Bryce, welcome back.
Thank you. I'm really enjoying this tonight. This is a rocking good talk, and I think it's. I I don't know about everyone who's watching it, but I'm awake. I'm having a good time.
You know what? We're going to have to do a show sometime, maybe by the end of the year. Bring you back on. We'll bring on Ross Coulthard, maybe a couple of other journalists, just to kind of talk about the story that is emanating going in. You know, the year that was going into 2022. I think that would be a solid show for us to do.
I also enjoy the I think that, look, what we're doing, the sort of the one-on-one, that's a great form, fantastic, but it's also nice when you mix it up and you have people that are having a conversation that's got a lot of different points in it. So that's also cool.
I want to start off with Anne's question, because she asked, Bryce, if the government granted you a 1-hour interview with an extraterrestrial and a tour of a ship, but said you need to drop this entire topic afterwards, would you?
First of all, Anne, that's a really intriguing question on a lot of different levels for me. It's never happened to me, just to be clear, but I think it's almost the opposite of what would happen. Let's say that the government did grant me a 1-hour interview with an ET and a tour of the ship. I can't imagine they'd do that and say, drop it. I think they'd instead say, you've seen this, you've talked to him, and now we want you to help us with your narrative, with our narrative. I think it's a narrative question. They'd be far more likely to say, hey, man, you've got a platform, you've got a forum, you're a public speaker. We need you to help represent what we want out there, which is interesting because, and the reason I'll tell you why I was smiling about it, Ann, is that years ago, I had kind of a debate with Carl Sagan in a parking lot about UFOs. And I asked him, I said, I had interviewed him for the Voyager 2 Saturn encounter. And on the way, I walked him to his car afterwards. It was a national show, and I walked him to his car. And I said, you know, Dr. Sagan, it really is interesting to me that you say that the universe is teeming with life, and yet you also say, and the intelligent life, and yet you also say that they couldn't possibly be here, which is odd to me, because you think that we should go out and explore space. What if other people did that? So he was not happy to be challenged. We had a nice little conversation about UFOs. Didn't really think about him for years. He died in 1996. And in 1996, I was doing Dark Skies, and we turned Carl Sagan into a character in the show, right? And you can see that clip on my YouTube channel. But what we did with Carl Sagan is we did a version of that. The Majestic 12 people in Dark Skies bring Sagan in. They pull him off the streets, kidnap him basically, and they say to him, now, Dr. Sagan, you're in no danger. No one's going to hurt you. But here's the thing. If you want answers to your questions, we can provide them. We actually know what's going on, and we'll provide it. But then you work for us. If you don't want that deal, there's a car waiting outside, and we'll be happy to take you home right now. And Sagan in our show goes, I'll take the deal. I want to know what's going on. And so that's why Sagan became such a debunker of UFOs in our worldview. So I guess that's a long-winded way of answering your question. I think the answer to that is I would expect them to want more from me than to shut up if they showed me all that stuff. I think they would want me to help with their narrative.
I'm not going to lie. I can be bought.
Yeah, of course you want to know.
I could totally be bought by that, because number one, I didn't start this show because I had an interest in developing all these topics. On a very superficial level, I started Spaced Out Radio because of my own experiences that I couldn't find answers for, and the only way I knew how was, well, I dusted off the old broadcast journalism degree and decided to put it back on the wall and try and do something legitimately that I could figure on out. And
you know, it's such an interesting hypothetical question, though, isn't it? You say you can be bought. I think if that actually got presented to me, I would say I would accept the deal with the idea that I'd be on the inside then and could try to talk them into a better form of communication with the public. And I would sort of take that on. And I will also say, and without getting into it, it's too long of a story, and I'm actually writing about it right now, so I'm not really at liberty to talk about all the details. But While doing Dark Skies, and many of you know this, my partner Brent Friedman and I were approached by people who said they were from the Office of Naval Intelligence, and I'm writing a more detailed analysis of who they were and why they approached us. So it's not the craziest thing that you've just said. I'm sure people have been approached because I was.
By men in black.
Well, they didn't wear black suits. And again, I'm going to give you like only the 20-second version because I'm doing some investigative work in it that I'll be writing about. But I had a party here at my house, this house, on the night of the Dark Skies premiere, and a guy crashed the party, and he said he was with the Office of Naval Intelligence, and we had conversations. And then about a week later, he brought his boss with him to the Dark Skies office, and they both laid out that they wanted to help us make Dark Skies more accurate.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Boy, that's a tease right there.
Yeah, so I'm actually working on a as I said, writing about it, and I'll try to put more. So look for that. I don't want to get into it right now because I'm still in the middle of trying to do the research and present it properly, but I'm not trying to hide it, but it did happen. I've talked about it before. Whether the people were from the Office of Naval Intelligence or not is an open question. Although I would have to say, if they weren't from the Office of Naval Intelligence, and they certainly talked like they were, then who would do that? I mean, why would somebody even think to do that? So I don't know.
I forgot to tell you my story about Justin Trudeau.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. I want to hear that.
Okay. So I was tipped off by two different sources, one in Canada's capital of Ottawa, who confirmed it for me, and one out of Washington, D.C., that our ambassador at the time, a gentleman named David McNaughton, met with Lou Elizondo's successor to talk about UFOs sometime between August and December of 2019. And McNaughton was then called back to Ottawa to break down the information with Prime Minister Trudeau and with the Defense Minister up here, Harjit Sajjan. Do you think I can get anybody to talk about that story? I have two different sources in two different capitals.
Wow.
Cannot get any paperwork on record. In fact, my Ottawa source behind the scenes has been trying to drop FOIA requests to get the what was discussed in that meeting. It will not come out.
That's but okay. That gives me hope. There are people like you pushing for that kind of information.
Absolutely.
And it's not going to end. And by the way, I see that Irish Lincoln has said, put up Bryce's Twitter. I wouldn't mind it if you could somehow put that up, but I'll say it verbally. It's at Hollywood UFOs. So at Hollywood and then UFOS. At Hollywood UFOs. And I would love to have all of you who are listening here there. Thank you. That's terrific. And by the way, if you want to see the articles on Medium, another way to do that would be whatifufos.com.
Yes.
So those at Hollywood UFOs for Twitter, whatifufos.com for the Medium articles.
I will put that up for our audience.
You're a good man. Thank you. I'm not trying, but I love the dialogue. And it's always good to get feedback. So that's great.
Absolutely. But when you look at the stories and the secrets...
I'm sorry, it's not whatif.com. It's whatifufos.com.
Whatifufos.com. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Not a problem. I will take that one down. But when you look at it and you look at this story, that this is a story that is going to affect every single person on this planet. Doesn't matter whether you're an atheist, agnostic, Christian, Catholic,
Absolutely.
Protestant, Hindu, Muslim, Buddhist, whatever it may be. It's going to affect every person on this problem. Do you think it comes down to the idea that those in charge of this narrative do not want this story coming out because they are afraid of how the people on this planet are going to react.
Well, I mean, that goes back to War of the Worlds, 1938, and, the concern. And certainly that's why Richard Dolan and I wrote after Disclosure to sort of address that. But I actually have a slightly more nuanced thought on that right now. It's kind of clear to me even though this hasn't been the perfect rollout, it's kind of clear to me that even though there may be forces who are not quite in sync with each other about how we should handle this, a rollout of sorts is in progress. So I don't think the goal anymore at those high levels is to completely deny it. I think there's a different plan that's being unveiled right now. And frankly, I would like to be a consultant to those people and tell them how I think they could do it better. But I think a decision has been made that even if it's going to be a rough ride, it's time to do it. So I do think the wind is at the back of Disclosure. It's just a slower wind. It's not a hurricane yet. It's just a slower wind, but we're still going to get there. And so I think, it's very funny. Here's what I always say about UFO Disclosure. Many of us have seen Dr. Strangelove, and you remember the George C. Scott character, General Buck Turgidson. And when he's talking to the inner sanctum about nuclear war and how it's survivable, what does he say? He goes, "I'm not saying we're not going to get our hair mussed." Okay? That's what I think Disclosure looks like. We're going to get our hair mussed, right? It's not going to be perfect. People are going to hoard toilet paper again, right? Truck drivers who drive gasoline supplies aren't going to show up for work every day. There'll be lines at gas stations. There'll be a lot of disruption, but we'll probably do better. I mean, look, what could we do that would, in Disclosure of UFO reality, that would be much more disruptive than what we've just been through with COVID and the whole political disruption of the United States. So we're going to be able to handle it. We can handle the truth.
We can. I'm not sitting comfortable with that. And I'll tell you why. I mean, you brought up some great examples. I think COVID has been, I'm not going to get into the whole vax thing, anti-vax thing. It's not about that. But I think what we've seen with COVID, the way people have treated each other through COVID, hogging milk, ripping milk out of a mother's arms while her child needs milk, toilet paper, meat. I mean, you saw the videos of people literally carrying $3,000 worth of meat in two buggies. It's ridiculous.
It's going to be. I just need to make it clear. I believe it's going to be a rough ride. Okay, I'm not saying it's going to be simple. In fact, I put my money where my mouth is. Dolan and I wrote an entire book about it. And I urge people, that book has aged well. As I said, this is the 10th anniversary of AD after Disclosure. I urge people to still read that, because you know why Richard Dolan and I wrote that book? Because we wanted to read it and nobody had written it. So we wrote the book that we wanted to read, right? We researched it. We wrote it, we debated it, etc. We put it out, and if you'd asked me 10 years ago when we put it out, if it would still be the only book of its kind today, I would have said no. There'll be, half a dozen more by 10 years from now. But there hasn't been one. So I still think while it's not correct in virtually every assumption, as we said earlier at the beginning of it, a lot of it is dead on. Like when we said Disclosure happens on a Friday after 4:00, we made about 500 predictions like that in that book. And a lot of them are turning out to be true. And without getting into too many details, I hope to have an announcement soon about how AD is going to have life as something that is not a book, but is in the television world.
Fidgety Aura makes a good comment here. Most people will probably cope, but the percentage of people losing their minds will be high enough to cause chaos.
I agree. It is going to be a bumpy ride. And in fact, one of the things that AD tried to do is, here's, just so everyone understands, we said AD was such a big deal. Disclosure is such a big deal that it's the equivalent of Jesus Christ, right? So they'd start the calendar over. So BC is before confirmation. AD is after disclosure, right? And we are in the twilight shadow world right now between BC and AD. And what Dolan and I tried to do with AD is, okay, there's AD plus 1 day, right? What's that first day look like? What's that first week look like? What's that first month look like? And so what I'm agreeing with everybody is, yes, people are going to be losing their minds depending on how clear the disclosure is. And the first month is going to be extraordinarily bumpy, and maybe the first year, and maybe even the first decade. But if we survive as a species through all this difficulties we're in right now, eventually it will be incorporated into the human experience and we'll cope somehow, some way, because that's what people do.
All right. We got 5 minutes left with you tonight, Bryce. Yeah. And I'm going to ask you this. Give me the top 5 people that Bryce Zabel trusts for information regarding UFOs.
That's interesting because I don't trust any one person with everything. So I've mentioned that my collaborator on AD is Richard Dolan. I don't agree with everything that Richard says. For example, we disagree about 9/11, which is not a UFO issue, but he believes one thing and I don't believe it. And by the way, I do want to acknowledge one thing. I was the chairman of the Television Academy when 9/11 hit. So I'm the guy that postponed the Emmys twice that year. 49 years of Emmys, and they'd never been postponed, did it twice. I learned a lot about crisis management, and that is part of what gives me some hope that we can get through disclosure. But now to answer your question. So let me give you 5 people who I trust a lot of what they say and like a lot of what they say. It's Dolan. I like Whitley Strieber. I think when he sits down and writes an essay that isn't about some of the other stuff, but is about his analysis of the politics of the situation. I like I like how he talks. I like on a daily basis, as I said, I like to read good old Ryan Robbins. I just like the way that guy rolls. I like the way he talks. But people whose sources of information I trust, very high, I put George Knapp, very high. And that's 4. And you know what? It's an imperfect thing because I can't remember the very people that I would probably stick up there. I think, these days, Ross Coulthart is on my list. I'm really bonding with this guy's. I got the mind meld going on with this guy. I think he's going to be an important player, and he's probably somebody I agree with more across the board.
Do you trust the intelligent community?
Not really. I mean, some. Well, look, I'll tell you someone who I like a lot, who's got intelligence connections, is Mellon, Chris Mellon. I mean, do I know everything about the guy? Do I know everything about Lou Elizondo? I don't. But do I think that overall they're probably trying to lay something out that makes sense and that is legit? I think they probably are.
What about Danny Sheehan?
I met Danny. I had lunch with him back when I was chairman of the Academy. I like him. I don't know enough about what he's saying right now today to take a position.
Okay. What about Lou?
I like Lou. I'm not one of the people that automatically say, well, he comes from the intelligence world, therefore you can't trust anything he says. I think sometimes things can be what they look like. And what it looks like to me is whoever is in charge, let Lou go do these things. So he's doing what comes natural to him, and people who are in positions of authority are not stopping him.
I will say this about Lou Elizondo. As an experiencer, I think he's a major experiencer. I think he has seen things that we could only imagine from movies like Close Encounters of the Third Kind and whatever. And I think that if he was ever able to be released from his NDAs to tell his true story, with this whole topic would be way further ahead than where we are.
Listen, that's what I think. I believe. Well, I mean, listen, I just like to think that after 30 years of doing journalism and drama, both together, I become a fairly good judge of sort of character. When I watch somebody, I judge his character to be decent and honest.
Me too.
Maybe I'm wrong, but that's how he hits me.
Bryce Zabel, 30 seconds. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Okay, listen, I'd love to be in touch with all of you on Twitter, and that is at Hollywood UFOs. All right? But some of the more interesting things that I'm doing is on the Medium platform. All right? I have a publication called Trail of the Saucers. We have over 150 articles now that are really high-quality articles. You can sort of get a gateway into those articles at whatifufos.com, and also just on Medium. Just go to Medium and look up my name, and you'll find my articles.
Bryce Zabel, everybody, great friend of this show, so we respect him highly. Coming up next, Dave.
Right on, everybody. Thank you.
Coming up next, Dave 101. Oh, the anger, the deceit, the UFOs. Next. That went way too fast, man.
Oh, that was
way
fun.
Way too fast.
Well, thank you for being such a great host and interviewer and positive energy, and it was just all terrific.
Got requests from my audience on your YouTube channel to do some live chats.
Okay, well, you know what? I may be in touch with you to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'd be happy to do it. But you don't live chat by yourself, do you? Don't you have to have somebody to talk to? Or
the minute you put it out, your audience will show up. They will.
Oh, well, maybe I should try that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, this was great. I hope people liked it, and it was my pleasure to be a part of it. So thank you.
Really appreciate you. We'll talk soon, okay?
All right. Yes, you will. Good luck with the rest of your show. I don't know how I bail out of this.
I'll bail you out.
All right, you bail me out. All right. Bye-bye. Thanks again.
Bye-bye. Bryce Zabel, everybody. Bryce Zabel. That was a good show. Not going to lie. That was a great show. Got a lot of stuff on there. Thank you, everyone. That was a lot of fun. Good night, Laurie. I feel good after that one. I feel real good after that one. Dave 101 next. I'm excited about it. What kind of cookies, Irish Lincoln? Thank you, Spooky. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much for that awesome super chat. Is the rumor true that it's Katie's birthday? Because I sung happy birthday to her and she got mad at me last night. Thank you, Brian. We're doing our best. We got a good team in Spookles the Cat and Dirty Filth and everyone chipping in to get these great guests. So give all the credit to them. Science Bob is doing better. He is going to be on his way home here soon. And, well, he's not doing better. His family emergency is getting better, which is good. So that's a positive sign. Where's Eric Cooper? Is Eric Cooper still here? I saw you, Coop. No hiding that beautiful face and beard from me, man. Wizard Grand, how you doing? Oh, there's Coop. My man, Eric Cooper. Been with me forever, man. Love this man. One of the smartest guys in ufology ever. Hey, look who it is. It's Aussie Rob. How's tomorrow looking? How's them ham hocks? All right, big thank you to Spooky, to Chuck, to Mandingo, Ann, Fat Bass, or Bass, Politically Incorrect, Marie, Lori, Snakes, and Cat for an awesome night of super chats. Really appreciate it. We're going to get going here with Dave 101 next, so sit back. Here we go. Rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Want to say hello to and remind everybody that you can check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com, where we have a plethora of features for you, including rocking out to Bumblefoot and reading up on Captain Shirk's SOR Newswire. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show. It's time once again for a little Dave 101.
It's time for Dave 101.
Now, when I started Dave 101 just a few weeks ago, I told everybody how I hate ufology. How I hate it these days, you know, the monotony, the news, the different tribes that are all kind of coming together and blasting and beating the hell out of everyone verbally on Twitter and other social media platforms. And I will tell you this, I'm glad I stepped away. I'm glad I stepped away. Why? Because I feel like I can breathe again. I feel like I can have that outsider's perspective of what is going on without the daily diatribe and mishmash of the BS that is currently out there. And the debates that continue to go on and on and on ad nauseum. Let me tell you this. It is something of a relief for me to be able to say, I don't care about ufology anymore. I really don't. Why? Well, as we talk tonight about the egos, the narrative with Bryce Zabel, you will see that even some of the best investigators in this field, like Bryce, are having the same attitude about it. This was proof in the pudding that other people are actually getting sick of it as well. Because if I don't agree with your opinion or you don't agree with my opinion, immediately you are a jerk and someone that needs to be put down, all the way to the point of trying to get you banned from your show, banned from your networks, banned from everywhere. We want to shoot each other until we are all done and dead in the field of ufology. There is no break unless you decide yourself to step away. So somebody asked me the other day, they said, Dave, why do you want to step away from UFOs when your show is about UFOs? Well, it's about a lot of topics. We just like the weird and strange. But it's the anger in the people that have really turned me off. People accusing others of being liars about their experiences. Not just me. Liars about their programming, liars about their listenership, liars about everything. It's tough to take. The majority of people in this field who are broadcasting to you this news, whether it's UFO videos, whether it's podcasts, whether it's research from MUFON or whomever, there's always got to be someone who tries to bring you down. A great example of this is MUFON. I know people on MUFON's board of directors. I know people who are MUFON investigators. And apparently one dirty duck makes a whole team. That's the way we're supposed to think in today's, oh my goodness, type of world. I can't believe that. Look at that. Cancel culture. Okay, when Jan Harzan did his thing and decided that he was going to try and pick up young girls as the head of MUFON, using MUFON's computers, immediately everybody targeted MUFON as almost like a pedophile type outfit. Not true. Not true at all. I remember talking to one member who was almost in tears because they couldn't believe that this was happening. That's one. That's an example. All right? We want to always seem to kill one of each other here in this field. For what? What is the purpose? What is the purpose of raking an experiencer over the coals because you do not like what they said? Then people will say, well, aren't you doing that to Angeli? No, I think Angeli needs a lot of questions asked. And canceling interviews at the last minute is not one way to do that. It's just a tiring field of rhetoric that is going nowhere because the minute you bring up something logical, the illogical jump all over you. It wears you thin. It tires you out. It brings off stress. And then you look at yourself and you wonder, is this even worth it? What am I doing here? If people can't see the UFO narrative for what it is, one of the successful parts of this entire narrative has been to tear this community apart. A once proud, beautiful community filled with woo, filled with incredible stories that has turned into going for the jugular on everybody. We see it with Travis Walton and Mike Rogers, where now after 40 years, Walton is a liar. So some say. I still believe his story. I still believe the fact that he passed a number of lie detector tests. I see good people dropping out of the field, like my friend Eric Cooper from Forest Moon Paranormal, because after 20 years, he's had enough of the BS, enough of the lies, enough of the stealing, and a lack of camaraderie. Where we should be pumping people up, we are trying to tear their walls down. And it's not fun. And it's a decision to back away from ufology and the deep part of it that I am really enjoying these days. I'm very much enjoying it. It's tiring because we're not allowed to believe anybody. And if you back somebody and their experiences, or you back somebody in their research, you become a target now in this industry. And I'm done with being a target. I'm done with the drama that happens. Look, there's always going to be people who talk poorly of you or ill of you. That happens. But we're done with being targets for talking about topics that we love. Talking about stories that we love. We need to get back to understanding that whether you like it or not, those who have had some major, really cool experiences, whether it's Betty and Barney Hill, whether it's Travis Walton, whether it's Calvin Parker, whether it's Samantha Mowat, Chris Bledsoe and his entire family, they have a place here. They are allowed to have a place. What we see on social media, not all the time, but some of the time, is rather disgusting. The personal attacks, the accusations, and usually the people who are saying this have absolutely no proof. All right? It's like the age-old argument where if I came out and say, the sky is blue, but somebody's like, aha, caught ya, you missed the cloud in the east. The sky's not blue, it's cloudy as well. Caught ya, you missed it, you're lying. The sky is not blue. It is both sun and clouds today. Bottom line, we're always looking to try and push people off that ledge. We rip people for making money off their books. We rip people for taking in conferences. We rip people for getting opportunities, even though their credentials don't hold the weight that they are being given the opportunity for. As we said with Bryce, we have a community of people who just make up a title and decide that that's what they are. Fake scientists, fake journalists, fake researchers, fake demonologists in the paranormal. We've seen it all. There are some brilliant, brilliant minds in this community. From professional journalists to professional scientists to professional researchers. And unfortunately, for some reason in UFOs, that isn't good enough anymore. It's not good enough. And it makes me question whether or not we truly, truly want disclosure. Whether we truly want to know the answers to the questions that we have. Whether we even deserve it, considering how we treat the entire community. Look, I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal. I've fallen for the drama as well. And Lord knows that I've hashed out some of the drama by calling out people for lying about their credentials over time. I do that to try and protect my listeners from fake information. I don't want our spaced out radio listeners quoting people who lie that they're a scientist, or quoting people who lie that they're a journalist, or quoting people who are absolutely ripping the shreds out of experiencers or officials. It's not what we're about. We're better than that. This is a better community than what we are giving ourselves credit to, and more importantly, it's a better community than the way we are acting. Social media has become a war zone for ufology. It really has. People defending people who have criminal records, people exploiting people for information and using it as their own, people lying about their own stories in order to get that contact or get on that interview with that radio show or podcast or YouTube channel. We see it every day. How do we make it better? We make it better by you, the listener, tuning in and looking for the quality. It's not about the quantity out there. It's about the quality. What resonates with you? You, the listener, are the ones who can control all of this and turn it around. How? If you know somebody that is doing what isn't good for ufology, stop supporting them. Stop supporting the negativity. Stop supporting the bitchiness of this community. Can I say that on the radio? Sure. We're going to get away with that one tonight. Because there is a lot of good information out there that people are working diligently on to bring to you if you listen and if you know where to look. Keep your eyes open, but keep your ears open wider, because we want to get that information out to you. But this should be enjoyable as well. For the majority of people out here, they want that information out. They don't care how they get it. And some of them, it's very successful. I look at somebody like Nicole Sackage, who is a brilliant, brilliant researcher for Grant Cameron and on her own. Always vetting her sources, always vetting her information. That's what we need to go for. Those who are credible in this field. But unfortunately, what we are seeing today, especially on social media, from YouTube to UFO Twitter, we are seeing the worst of the worst, because if I disagree with you and you disagree with me, now you have to cut me down and insult me. And the fact that the majority of people, especially on UFO Twitter, who hide behind 4 or 5 or 8 different profiles, the attacks just keep coming. Not just on me, on others as well. It's daily. It's rampant. It's disgusting. To clean up this field, it starts with the listeners, those who are like the people in our chat rooms tonight or listening to this show, who are just going to have enough of the BS. Well, then you say, well, how do I find out what's BS and what's not? Real easy. Real easy. Go with your gut. Go with that feeling inside. You know what's best for you. You know what's right for you. If it's insultive, if it's antagonizing, it probably isn't the right information. And do your homework on people. Check their resumes. It's easy to tell that Bob McGuire, Dr. Science Bob, worked at Virginia Tech University. It's easy to know that Richard Dolan was a university professor in history. It's easy to tell by listening to Bryce Zabel or Ross Coulthart that they are professional journalists. That's where it comes down to. When you feed the anger, when you feed the hate, it only makes the fire bigger. Or you can help be a part of extinguishing it. That is your Dave 101 for the day. Thank you so much for listening to me get right to it, get down and dirty, and we'll do it all again next week. Now it's time for the Newswire. Shirky Poo, what do you got for us? The news is always changing, which is why we bring you the SOR Newswire at the back end of every show. We're getting sometimes to the really awesome, like this one. If you're a Spider-Man fan, how would you like to own issue number 1? Yes, the comic that debuted, Queen's Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, has been auctioned off for a record-setting $3.6 million. The 1962 Marvel issue Amazing Fantasy number 15 was sold at Heritage Auctions, Signature Comic, and Comic Art. Before all the clones, symbiotes, and civil wars, we see Spider-Man in a much simpler time doing what he does best, catching crooks and saving the day. And, of course, written by the famous Stan Lee, penciled by Steve Ditko, and saw Jack Kirby collaborate on the cover. The print of Amazing Fantasy, which features a cover of Peter Parker, the timid teenager, shocking the world as the web-slinger, is known to be one of the 4 near-mint copies of the comic with a certified guaranteed company rating of 9.6. Yeah, $3.6 million. How awesome is that? If I only had that, I can definitely say I would not spend it on a comic. Scary situation potentially here on the International Space Station. Astronauts aboard woke up to fire and smoke alarms triggered by an incident in the Russian Zvezda module early on Thursday. The crew saw smoke and smelled an odor of burnt plastic, which was recharging its batteries at the time. Though the exact cause of the smoke and odors is not yet clear, the ISS crew restored safe air quality in the station by activating an aggregate filtration system, according to the Russian space agency Roscosmos. The incident is not expected to interfere with ISS activities, including a 7-hour spacewalk scheduled for Thursday, which will be conducted by cosmonauts Oleg Novitsky and Pyotr Dubrov. Moving on. All right. Let's see here. What do we got? A company is seeking a horror fan to get paid $1,300 to watch 13 creepy classics and monitor their heart rate to compare their fear factors of high and low budget films. Finance Buzz, a financial advice website, announced it is seeking a horror movie heart rate analyst to watch 13 horror films with varying budgets and compare the scares from big budget movies to their low-end counterparts. The chosen candidate will use a Fitbit device to track heart rates while watching the movies. The films selected by the website are Amityville Horror, A Quiet Place Part 2, Candyman, Insidious, The Blair Witch Project, Sinister, Get Out, The Purge, Paranormal Activity, and the 2018 remake of Halloween. The lucky candidate hired for this ghostly gig will be paid $1,300 for their efforts. We'll also provide a Fitbit to wear during the movie marathon and a $50 gift card to cover the cost of movie rentals. Applications are being accepted through September 26th. And finally tonight, interesting one here. A Florida sheriff's deputy, who is also a beekeeper, came to the rescue when a fallen tree fell on a Florida home, causing hundreds of bees to swarm. The Volusia County Sheriff's Office said that a large tree fell on a home in DeLand, causing the hundreds of Italian honeybees, that is, living in the tree to swarm the house. This stepped into Deputy David Wiggins' household, whose family has been involved in beekeeping since World War II. He was summoned to the scene to collect the swarming insects. He was stung about 10 times in the situation, but the bees, nonetheless, are all safe and sound. Quick Thought of the Day happens every night at this time, where we ask a question on our social media pages. What is your opinion of the UFO narrative? Start off with Ted. I always wondered what it meant by narrative. Davey, I think that the current mainstream narrative is divisive. Kevin, the misuse and abuse of the concept, phrase, doctrine, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of a few. Huge comment there, Kevin. Vince, the previous narrative was of one that they simply did not exist and ridiculing anyone who reported a UFO with the stigma of being less than credible witness to learning more about UFOs. Chris, another Chris, usually is written after the preface of a good novel or play. Joe gets the final word. I would listen to the UFO narrative more if it was narrated by Morgan Freeman. Thank you to everybody hanging on out with us. What a great show tonight. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight on YouTube, LGAB, Revolution Radio, Spreaker, the Facebook Space Travelers Club, and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends,
make a mistake. We're watching.
We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, yep, we've got room for them too. Good night.